Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel, YLS it Invincible. Chapter 81. Are you sure? Robert couldn't stand it anymore. He was surrounded by a large group of people, but the Hangwo police, who were supposed to uphold fairness and justice, just looked on and seemed to have no intention of helping. Why don't you go up and help them? The female reporter's surname is Zhang Yunxi. She is now very puzzled by the police's behavior of watching from afar, even though she has just listed Robert's crimes so clearly. Injuring someone with your hands and causing serious injury, this meets the requirements of a criminal offense. Seemingly sensing the female reporter's dissatisfaction, someone from the police team clarified her doubts. If we get involved, we have to ensure the safety of this person. Because we can't use lynching, we can only hand him over to the court, but you should also be able to tell that the other person is a foreigner, and he is probably from the Mei country. He didn't say any more next words, thinking that Zhang Yunxi could understand the meaning. In fact, although the world has entered the 21st century, many countries that claim to be civilized countries have cancelled the title of colony, but they have only cancelled the title. The Han Kingdom, or the all-round strategic alliance of the Mei Kingdom, to be nice, is actually just a colony with a changed name. This can be seen from the fact that the laws of the Han Kingdom cannot restrain the people of the Mei Kingdom. Pay me a fee for this gringo. Kill him. The demonstrators who had originally protested against the deployment of THAAD, now surrounded Robert. The first few leaders cheered, and everyone immediately responded. This may be because these people have been suppressed for too long, but Robert does not think that he is an event that can be manipulated at will. Suddenly, a blue light flashed on his body, and then before the dozens of people surrounding him could react, they were sent to an unknown space by space teleportation. When more people around saw this scene, they were frightened and fled in all directions, because these people blocked most of the sight so that people outside had no idea what was going on. All I know is that after a flash of blue light, dozens of people disappeared. Zhang Yunxi exclaimed. She had actually been observing the battle closely just now, and she quickly made a sound when she noticed something unusual. Siba, what are you? Get the gun. What is this kid? In fact, there was no need for her to give a warning. The cold country policemen had all drawn their guns at this time, and the timid ones among them even had their legs trembling. However, Robert had no intention of pleading guilty. He originally wanted to deal with this group of policemen together, but after looking at the deserted environment around him, he decided to control the possibility of becoming a native of his motherland. What evidence do you have that I was responsible for the disappearance of those people? Robert simply raised his hands, but this was not because he was submissive to this group of people, but because he was submissive to his own heart. After all, it was easy to lose sleep after suffering too many evildoers. The police tried to get close to Robert, and when one succeeded, all the people nearby rushed to control him. Let the judge decide whether you are guilty or not. A police officer who was handcuffing Robert said in his ear. Yeah, I think that will be a judge from the Mei Kingdom. Maybe he will come to see me and ask for forgiveness. Robert looked at the police officers and mocked their country's judicial power that was only valid for its own people without any scruples. You, don't be fooled by him. Shinla, go down and I'll hold him down. The young Hangwo policeman was obviously irritated by Robert's words and was about to take action in anger, but was stopped by the old policeman and asked to stay away. However, what the policeman named Shinla didn't know was that he had actually escaped death just now. If he had really hit him that time, Robert would not be used to it. It's normal for young people to be a little angry. The old policeman made a pun, because in his opinion Robert was not very old. Robert, you all seem to speak English. Old police officer, the superiors have stipulated that you may not know that we meet people like you almost every few days. As he spoke, he let out a helpless sigh. This may be the helplessness of a weak country. Seeing that he was about to be taken into a police car, he would probably go through a series of interrogations, and then people from the Mei government would find out about his arrest, and then they would put pressure on him to rescue him. Can I make a call? Old police officer, of course. I thought you would look for your connections after arriving at the police station. He had seen early on that Robert was confident. Similar to this situation where dozens of people were confused about life and death, and he could still remain calm, it only meant that this person was either stupid or powerful. It's obvious that Robert is not stupid, at least not in the sense that he can speak normally. Hello. At this time, in the private residence of President May, Acting President Anthony, who had been sleeping just now, was awakened by a phone call. Because of the time difference, it was still close to noon in the Han Kingdom, while it was already late at night in the May Kingdom. Originally, Anthony wanted to scold the person who disturbed his rest, but when he saw the caller ID, he found out who was calling. He successfully swallowed back the sarcastic words he was about to say, and turned his mouth into a gentle greeting. Lieutenant General Robert, may I ask why you called so late? Anthony really didn't understand what it was that needed to be called so late at night, but even though he was full of resentment, he couldn't say it, and he was indeed surprised when Robert told the reason for his call. Well, something happened. I was arrested in Han Country, not far from the May Army base. Anthony. What? 10 minutes later. Hurry up and release the handcuffs to Lieutenant General Robert. The commander of the Han May Army came to the scene in person. After seeing the handcuffs on Robert's hands, he was so frightened that he quickly asked the Hangwo police to remove them. Okay. The old policeman closest to Robert had a trace of sweat on his face at this time. He thought that Robert had some background, but what he didn't expect was that he himself was the background. Mr. Lieutenant General, I will immediately launch an investigation into the unfriendly treatment you received upon your return. As he spoke, the commander of the garrison in the Cold Country glanced at the group of Cold Country policemen intentionally or unintentionally. The guy scared them so much that their legs were shaking. Even the young police officer who wanted to beat Robert at the beginning was no exception. After all, in the Cold Country, Mei Jun's status is transcendent, so in the Cold Country, anyone who really wants to disappear can be allowed to disappear. No wonder these police officers are afraid. No need to investigate, it has nothing to do with these people. Robert's words solved their big trouble. You must know that if these police officers are really investigated by Mei Jun, they will be affected in the future even if no problems are found. The most intuitive thing is that when you are promoted, your superiors will consider whether they will offend Mei Jun, which will result in many opportunities not being available to them. Since Mr. Lieutenant General said it has nothing to do with you, then you should go back first. The commander-in-chief usually doesn't bother to talk to these little characters. Unless it's during interviews and shows, these people don't even have many opportunities to see him. Thanks. Seeing that they had escaped, these people were naturally grateful to Robert. But when such a scene fell in the eyes of Zhang Yunxi, she felt that her former worldview was collapsing. I really didn't expect that something like this would happen today in the 21st century. Didn't this general from the Mei Kingdom always claim to be here to protect us? It must be said that Zhang Yunxi was very tough. She took out her body camera and a portable microphone and prepared to approach the commander of the Mei army to interview him. However, after being stopped by the soldiers on the side, she chose to question him loudly. Commander Mei. Oh, this is really bad. Soldiers, please answer me why her words can be said in public without any punishment. His words were undoubtedly instructing the soldiers to clean up Zhang Yunxi. The Hangwo policemen who were leaving at the side saw this scene and were too angry to say anything. Some of them even accelerated their pace of leaving. Robert. I don't know your name, but the way you handle things is really rude. Has anyone ever told you about similar issues? In the end, just when Zhang Yunxi was about to be approached by the soldiers, it was Robert who took the lead in blocking her. At the same time, he spoke speechlessly to the commander of the station in the cold. Compared with some guys who are ready to destroy the world, I don't know who is rude. The commander of the garrison in the cold thought in his heart. He felt a little ashamed of being lectured in front of many of his subordinates, but when he thought about the person in front of him who could make the president submissive, he suddenly felt less embarrassed. Mr. Lieutenant General, my name is Dolly Zhou. Our actions just now were indeed rude, but I think the soldiers just misunderstood. His active submission made the Mei army soldiers who were originally eyeing him with eager eyes immediately step aside, leaving Zhang Yunxi with a way out. Zhang Yunxi looked at Robert's back and was a little speechless for a moment. She was afraid of him, but now she had another emotion, which was gratitude to him. In fact, Zhang Yunxi regretted it after he finished questioning the commander of the Mei army stationed in Han. This was especially true when the soldiers surrounded him with fierce looks. What? Seeing that the crisis was over, Robert also turned to look at Zhang Yunxi. He liked the other person's appearance more and more. Zhang Yunxi. Yeah, then, thank you. As a result, just one movement of turning around scared people so much that they stepped back. After seeing that Robert didn't move, he dared to speak timidly. What she didn't know was that it was this look that attracted Robert even more. He couldn't help but licked his slightly dry lips and said with a pun. You're welcome. I'm afraid I will stay in the cold country for a while in the future. It won't be a problem if I don't understand the language. Are you free to teach me the cold language tonight? Zhang Yunxi. Ah, oh, Hanyu. I can teach you now. Come at night, it's a better time to learn foreign languages. Zhang Yunxi looked at him blankly, a little confused, but after looking at Mei Jun around, she thought Robert was busy with something, so she chose to do it at night. There are a total of 300 tanks and armored vehicles, 150 combat aircraft, and 30 permanent surface ships. As soon as he entered the military camp, the commander-in-chief of Cold War reported to Robert as usual to his superiors. However, this was reasonable. After all, he was a major general and Robert was a lieutenant general. There was a superior-subordinate relationship between them. In this way, will my personnel and weapons configuration be enough to fight a battle that can destroy a small country? Sitting in the command room, Robert picked up a document and looked at it while talking, and found that it was a document for deploying THAAD. Dolly. Yes, it is perfectly fine to have such an assembly to destroy the political power of a small or medium-sized country, but... Before he finished speaking, he also looked at the document in Robert's hand. What the Mei army advertised in the cold country was that the deployment of THAAD was to defend against missile threats from the northern dynasties, but anyone with a discerning eye could see that there was another defense. There are people. After reading it for a while, Robert tore up the document and then said to the confused Dolly. Don't put this thing here, it's really useless if you hit it. In fact, Mei Guo's deployment of stagnation in Han Dynasty has more disgusting meaning than actual significance. As for who it wants to disgust. Dolly. But Lieutenant General Robert, that was an order issued by the President and the Pentagon at the same time. As the commander of the garrison in the cold, he wanted to struggle again. After all, it seemed a bit childish for Robert to cancel such an important matter with just one sentence. Moreover, Mei's purpose is not just to disgust a certain big country, but to test the other side's bottom line. This is a very strategic deployment, so Duoli wants to fight for it. Then you just apply with them, that is, the things I mentioned cannot appear in the cold country. Squinting his eyes, Dolly saw the dangerous light in Robert's eyes. In an instant, he was desperate for survival and nodded repeatedly. I don't have any objection. It's really not good for THAAD to be deployed here, but we still need to seek opinions from above on this matter. After saying that, Dolly called the president. Anthony, who had just slept for a while, was woken up again. This time when he confirmed that the caller was not Robert, he angrily picked up the phone and cursed when he answered the call. What do you think, General Dolly? Have you forgotten the time difference in Mei country after staying in Han country for so long? What are you calling in the middle of the night? Although there was not a single curse word between the lines, the angry tone made it impossible to connect what Anthony said with the good words. Mr. President, I'm sorry to disturb your rest. It's really an emergency. Dolly bit the bullet and reported the situation to Anthony, who didn't pay much attention at first. If you tear it up, tear it up. Robert can't always stay in the cold country. Won't you wait for him to leave before quietly deploying it? Or won't you send someone to attract his attention? After Anthony finished speaking, he immediately hung up the phone. After all, it was very annoying to be woken up twice while sleeping. This Dolly, he really can't do such a small thing well, ah. While taunting the commander-in-chief, Anthony continued to fall back on the bed. After stretching, he planned to continue sleeping, but he opened his eyes after just a few seconds. What does Robert mean by not allowing THAAD to be deployed? That thing won't hinder him. Could it be? Suddenly he thought of something that made him feel possible, and he couldn't help but feel dizzy. Why did the top management of the United States place Robert's command scope in Asia? Of course, it cannot be done casually, but with an extremely strong purpose. The rise of that country has seriously threatened the status of the Mei country. In addition, most of the Mao Shang's territory is also in Asia. Robert originally wanted to contain them, but now it seems to be out of control. Anthony, who was completely sleepless, stood up and sat on the bedside. Robert had been recognized by him and other senior officials of the United States as a walking nuclear weapon. It is even more terrifying than nuclear weapons. After all, it is difficult for a nuclear weapon to destroy the world, but Robert can do it with one person. A person possesses such a powerful power, unless he wants to hide it himself, it will definitely be known to the whole world. By then, Robert's attitude may determine the subsequent development of the world structure. No, you must not sit still and wait for death. Anthony made up his mind, so he picked up the phone and dialed without sleeping, and the number he dialed was the person in charge of the CIA. At the same time, in Hangzhou, Dolly put down the phone with some embarrassment, walked a few steps to the command room, and told Robert, who had been waiting for the result. Mr. Lieutenant General, the President has agreed with your suggestion and decided to postpone or cancel the deployment of the THAAD defense system. Dolly had now made up his mind. He decided to accept both of Anthony's suggestions. He would first fool Robert and then send someone to attract his attention, and he had chosen the attractive candidates. Well, don't delay, just cancel the deployment. Dolly, I will try to discuss it with Mr. President later. Okay, come on, send me a car and I'll go to Banksy's country to see what fun there is. Robert had already seen that Dolly was deliberately perfunctory, but he didn't care now. Since you don't want to deal with it, just wait for me to handle it for you later. Robert thought in his heart, with a smile on his face. Dolly thought that he had successfully fooled him, and he was very happy, so he went to arrange a vehicle for travel with a smile. Dolly, I don't think we need such a big formation, right? If you don't know about the machine guns of this armored vehicle, you might think we are going to fight. In just a few minutes, Dolly, the garrison commander, had arranged the personnel and vehicles. When Robert came out and saw it, he couldn't help but complain. Dolly's arrangement was simply more exaggerated than the treatment he received in the United States. Several armored vehicles were arranged in front and back. In addition to the bulletproof vehicle for Robert to ride in, there were even several vehicles in the middle filled with accompanying soldiers. Dolly, it is indeed a bit exaggerated. It can be optimized appropriately. He did not directly participate in the arrangement of this small matter of arranging travel. He just left it to his subordinates. Unexpectedly, they handled it so, cautiously. Robert, that's too exaggerated. You asked someone to leave a car and a driver, and then everyone else dispersed after the translation. If it weren't for the convoy in front of us, and there were May soldiers carrying guns on it, just looking at this scene, those who didn't know might have thought it was the Emperor's patrol. Dolly, you are really low-key. I will ask them to remove the extra people. After praising Robert, the commander personally went up to simplify the team. After a few more minutes, the arrangements were finally made, and Dolly ran over again and said to Robert, who was about to get in the car. Mr. Lieutenant General, President Han Guo just learned about your arrival and wants to see you. Do you need to go to the Blue House? Robert, he wanted to see me. And he asked me to go to the Blue House by myself. What's wrong? He's gone. Dolly, they really don't know the rules lately. I'm going to send someone to reply right now. In this matter, Dolly is on Robert's side. After all, here the senior management of May country have never regarded the people of Han country as equals to themselves. Mr. Lieutenant General, where are we going? The translator in the car asked Robert. Just take a look around. He had never been to Han country, so he didn't have any clear goals, so he drove out of the base and entered the city, driving aimlessly on the streets. Until the translator introduced Robert when passing by a building. This is one of the addresses of Samsung Company. Samsung companies are everywhere in the cold country. Mr. Lieutenant General, why don't we go to Samsung Science and Technology Park? The translator was from Han, China. Although he didn't speak much language when he mentioned Samsung, Robert could still see the pride on his face. Technology Park, what's the point of that? Go there, I think it should be quite interesting. Faced with the translator's suggestion, Robert did not take it. After all, why would he go see the technology in the cold country if he had nothing to do? If he wanted to see high-tech products, it would be better to go to Tony's house. The things there might be more advanced than the top technology in the entire cold country. Ah, okay. When the translator saw that his suggestion was not adopted, he couldn't help but feel depressed. After all, in his eyes, Samsung is the pride of their country, but now Robert would not choose to go to the Science and Technology Park even if he chooses to go to the film and television base. Stop and get checked. Just as the driver was about to drive into the film and television base that interested Robert, he was stopped by the security guard. At this point, the car with military badges on it, which even the cold country police officers had to salute when they met on the road, was forced to stop by the people at the door. What's the matter with you? If I don't call you, you won't know to stop, right? The security guard at the door came over and slapped the glass of Robert's vehicle with an extremely arrogant attitude. This car seems to belong to the military, right? Should we remind him? Is this kind of thing something gatekeepers like you and I should care about? It's better for us not to get involved in the affairs of their chaebols and the military. It turns out that the person who was tapping Robert's car window was not the security guard of this film and television base, but the personal security guard of a certain cold country chaebol, Big Shot. He usually follows his chaebol master, and is used to being bullied by ordinary people, which makes him more and more swollen. Now he is satisfied with the oppression of ordinary people, and he specially finds some powerful people who dare to provoke him. Perhaps this is the abnormal psychology of people who have been oppressed for a long time. This is a pass. The driver didn't want to cause trouble. After all, Lieutenant General Shao was sitting behind him. He also wanted to perform well to see if he could be valued, so he took out a pass in the hope that it would solve the problem. What is it? I asked the people in your car to get out of the car and be inspected. We, Mr. Lee, are inspecting inside. What if you have contraband? The pass that the driver took out was something that even allowed entry to the presidential palace of Han Country without inspection, but it was regarded as a piece of waste paper in front of the security guard in front of him. Why are you staring at me? Come down quickly and let me check. Seeing that the driver was still motionless, the chaebol security guard, who had long forgotten what all was, grabbed the driver by the collar and tried to pull him out of the car. Ah, Ziba, let him go quickly. The translator on the side saw this happening and quickly wanted to step forward to persuade this compatriot from the Han Country, but the other party ignored him at all. HMPH. As a person from the great cold country, you actually hang out with these foreigners. You are really heartless. Today I will let you see how Grandpa teaches them a lesson. A second ago, he was arrogantly saying that he wanted to clean up the driver and Robert who was sitting inside, two foreigners who did not belong to the great cold country. Ouch. As for now, he is in close contact with the ground, and those who don't know think that he loves that land so deeply. After a long while, he regained his composure, and when he got up, he wanted to show the person who hit him how powerful he was. How dare you hit me? Do you know who I am? He yelled before he even got up, but until he looked around, there was no one there. He was just yelling into the air just now. Ah, hee, ha ha ha. The two security guards from the original film and television base were laughing from ear to ear in the dark, but soon they stopped laughing. Sabeo, how dare you two fools laugh at me? Papa, two slaps sounded. Ming Jiren himself didn't know how long it had been since he had been humiliated like this by an outsider. At this time, he was like a mad beast that had been madly attacking the people around him, hoping to satisfy the missing piece in his heart. HMPH, I'll let you go today. Did that car get in? After giving the two people a slap and a kick, the chaebol security guard Ming Jiren had no intention of dealing with them anymore. He had bullied too many people at the bottom who dared not fight back after being beaten. Now if he wants to regain his so-called dignity, he can only do it through the person who just hit him. No matter what others think, he clearly thinks so. He went in and headed towards the West End. The two security guards who were beaten dared not speak out in anger. Even if it was just a dog in front of the chaebol's house in Han Country, they could not offend. Ming Jiren, humph, they are dead. As he said that, he didn't bother to look at the door anymore, and walked directly inside, picking up the walkie-talkie on his shoulder. Is there anyone over there in the West End? Is there anyone over there in the West End? The boss is right here. Jiren, what do you want? Ming Jiren, I was beaten. The security guard at the door said that the car driven by that man was coming to the West District. Please pay attention to the military-branded Audi bulletproof car and stop him if you see it. Hey, military-brand Audi. Then the other party should be a respectable person, right? Ming Jiren. Huh, the one who hit me is a driver. His boss wouldn't dare to be so presumptuous knowing who I am, let alone a driver. Oh, he's just a driver. Let me help you stop, but you have to treat us to dinner when the time comes. Ming Jiren. Okay, no problem. The communication between the two ended. The security chief who was talking to Ming Jiren didn't pay attention to the driver. To be honest, they had long lost their fear since the Li family moved the president down last year. Hey, besides the Mei people in the Han country, is there anyone else who can make noises with our young master? The man thought in his mind, and then arranged for the young master of the Li family's security to surround the car. At the same time, in the parking lot of the West District of the film and television base, Robert got off the car with the driver and translator. Mr. Lieutenant General, I was a little reckless just now. The driver's name is Mike Blair, a veteran who has been stationed in the Han Army for several years. During this period, he inevitably had conflicts with the Han people, but without exception, both the Han government and the superiors of the Mei Army helped him. As a result, Mike never paid much attention to the Han people, so he couldn't help but take action when he was provoked today. This still requires Robert sitting in the back of the car. Without him, there is no telling what kind of beating Mike would have made Ming Jiren. You are indeed too reckless. You should talk to that person properly first, instead of hitting him all at once. Before Robert could speak, the Hangguo translator couldn't help it anymore. He stepped forward and ridiculed Mike. Perhaps he felt unhappy because his compatriots were being bullied here. You did not do anything wrong, soldier. If you hit something like that, it doesn't matter. What I care more about now is what is your name? Translation. Robert's strong interruption made him swallow the unspoken words back into his mouth, which made his face turn red from holding back. Mike, on the other hand, was all smiles, and he answered Robert's questions extemporaneously and cheerfully. Mike, my name is Mr. Lieutenant General Mike Blair. You are very good. Robert patted him on the shoulder to show his approval, because he would have chosen to take action in that situation. Thank you, Mr. Lieutenant General. Mike has been overwhelmed by the sudden happiness. Just imagine how the future will develop after being valued by a young lieutenant general. It took Mike several years of experience to achieve the rank of second lieutenant. You must know that this was the result of several years in the Afghan battlefield. When he was on the battlefield, Mike wanted comfort and peace, so he tried his best to change places. But when he got his wish and came to the cold country, he was dumbfounded. Although it was comfortable here, there was no war at all. That meant that he had no military merit and was born as an ordinary person. In this environment, he had almost no possibility of promotion. He was originally confused and prepared to return to China in a few months, but he did not expect Robert to appear. Okay, let's go inside and have a look. Robert was very satisfied with Mike's excitement. Suddenly an idea appeared in his mind, and then he had to free his hands to try it. This is filming. Even though he was interrupted by Robert, the translator did not dare to show any rebellious emotions. Instead, he introduced Robert to the information on the sign. Robert originally nodded and was going to take Mike and the translator to the filming area, if for no other reason than to experience the feeling of watching a movie up close. But before they had taken a few steps, they were surrounded by a group of men in black, led by the security guard who stopped them at the door. Hey, so you're here, and it took a while to find us. Ming Jiren was deeply impressed by the driver who pushed him down. In addition, Robert's car was also parked nearby, which made him more sure that he had not found the wrong person. Mike stepped in front of Robert, and the Hangguo translator quickly hid behind the two of them. Mike, what do you want to do? He frowned. There were 11 people on the other side. Mike came out with a pistol, but the magazine of the gun only had 7 rounds of bullets. He didn't do it before he was sure that things would develop in an absolutely bad direction. Ready to draw a gun. Ming Jiren, how about it? Of course I want to improve your memory. The person behind is your boss, right? Let him go. I will settle the score with you alone. He is not a fool. The identity of a person who can get into a car with a military license plate is definitely not simple, although his background is definitely not as big as the young master of their Lee family. It should be noted that Jaren is not afraid of this. He once saved his young master's life, so he has nothing to fear, but the other security guards don't want to mess with this kind of thing. Yes, young master, we just want to talk to your driver. Can you step aside for a moment? Next to Ming Jaren, the security captain personally came out to smooth things over. He really didn't want to get involved if possible, but Ming Jaren was his brother after all, so he had to give an explanation after being beaten. What's more important is that just last month, Ming Jaren accidentally saved the life of the young master of the Lee family, which increased his prestige in the security team a lot. Many people have said that Jaren will be the new security captain in the near future. That is a role that belongs to the Lee family's young master Jinshin category, similar to a personal bodyguard. The old security captain was already almost at the age of retirement. Their line of work was very risky and they naturally retired early, so they were not worried about being seized of power. Today, Ming Jaren caused such a thing and he didn't want to get involved, but he was forced to come over. The old security captain didn't want to offend him at this juncture, so he had to bite the bullet. What if I don't leave? Robert didn't care about the entanglement of interests. After listening to the translator behind Mike's back, Robert stood up and said directly. And the translator had no choice but to come out and translate what Robert said. Translation. Our commander said he won't leave. Suddenly he seemed to remember something, his eyes flashed, and the Hangguo translator suddenly added. My commander is Lieutenant General Mei Jun. If you can't afford to offend me, leave now. Mike could understand some cold words, so after the second half of the translation came out, Robert had no reaction. Instead, Mike looked at him strangely. It is not difficult to see that this translator really thinks about his compatriots, but his efforts will be in vain because normal people will not associate a person who is at most 20 years old with Lieutenant General Mei Jun, together. Ha ha ha, did you hear that? He actually said that kid was a lieutenant general. Ming Jaren laughed at him first, and then his younger brother who wanted to curry favor with him also echoed. Yes, brother Ming, I'm afraid these people have been frightened by you and have started talking nonsense. Haha, don't even look at who our brother Ming is. If you were a general who ruled an area in ancient times, how could those people not be frightened by his momentum? Translation. You guys. The well-intentioned reminder was regarded as a joke, and the translator's face turned red and blue with anger, and then he was too lazy to care about these guys who don't know the heights of heaven and earth. What are they laughing at? Robert asked the translator who walked back behind him. They want to keep Mike. After all, the translator paused and did not translate all of Ming Jaren's words, but translated them as appropriate, and Mike, who could understand the cold language on the side, did not say anything. Because he is concerned about another issue now. Sir, these people just want to keep me here. You can retreat with the translator first. I can handle it with my gun. Brothers, give him a long memory. After laughing at Ming Jaren, he was ready to take action. At this time, Mike was also making a final attempt. Which of you stationed in Hanmei Army dares to move? At this time, Mike was holding a gun in one hand and his military ID in the other hand. Gudong. The old security captain swallowed his saliva, quickly grabbed Ming Jaren and whispered in his ear. Jaren, we can't afford to offend Mei Jun. Let the brothers surrender and retreat. It's okay that he didn't persuade him. Ming Jaren was originally a little scared after seeing the gun drawn and his identity revealed, but he was a face-saving man and didn't want to give in after the old security captain's advice. Ming Jaren, what are you afraid of, Second Lieutenant Mei Jun? Some time ago, Colonel Han Jun even called me a brother. Am I afraid of him? As he spoke, his hands moved toward his waist, which made Mike nervous. What are you doing with your hands? Stop what you are doing. As he spoke, Mike threw his ID to the ground and quickly opened the pistol safety. I won't make trouble with you. Seeing that the matter was likely to get serious, the old security captain quickly winked at his cronies and left quickly. Ming Jaren had no time to care about him after seeing it. HMPH. What are you afraid of, coward? We belong to young Master Li of the Li family. Who in the entire Han Kingdom dares to touch me? Ming Jaren's words were particularly loud, and he seemed to have said them specifically to Robert and his party and the only 3 younger brothers left by his side. Shoot, Mike, what are these people doing here? Robert did not leave behind. Instead, he hugged his arms and watched the show while the translator translated Ming Jiren's words into English for him one by one. Yes, in fact, Mike had long been dissatisfied with Ming Jiren. Now that he had received Robert's instruction, he naturally no longer had any scruples and immediately pulled the trigger. Bang! There was a gunshot, and there was a hole in Ming Jiren's forehead, but his expression at this time was still fixed in a state of disbelief. Ah, how dare you, Ziba! This sudden scene stunned the remaining security guards. They really didn't understand how things could evolve to this point. Fortunately, Mike didn't point the gun at them after giving Ming Jiren a shot. So these people just ran away in a hurry after questioning them. They actually had weapons on them, but they didn't have the courage to do so clearly. What's next, sir? After killing someone, Mike remained calm. Robert was very satisfied with his performance, and he was ready to implement his plan. Go back to the base first, someone will handle it here. Robert was just thinking about completing his own affairs, so he would not waste time for the death of a little guy. If he had stayed at the scene, it would have been a scene of pretending to be slapped in the face. Robert wanted to hide away, but reality often did not follow people's wishes, and someone insisted on getting slapped in the face. This is it, master. Robert and the others had just left for a while when the old security captain took his young master to the place where the conflict occurred. Ah, as soon as Li Shengyan arrived, he smelled the smell of blood. He immediately looked on the ground and saw Ming Jiren's body. Who did it? Li Shengyan, the second son of the head of the 3-star group, the most wealthy country in the Han dynasty, originally wanted to come to this film and television base to have fun today, but he did not expect that the person he valued would lose his life here. Okay, it seems to be a member of the Hanmei army, and he is also a second lieutenant. Li Shengyan. Ziba, it's the Mei people again. Do they really think they can ride on the head of the noble Dayan nation and dominate them? I must make them pay. After saying that, Li Shengyan used his connections to contact the Seoul Police Department. He originally disliked the troops stationed in Hanmei, but now that he was young and energetic like this, he wanted to give those people some color. Seoul Police Chief. Yes, we will catch people no matter what. It has to be said that the words of the children of the top chaebols are effective. The chief of the Seoul Police Department personally accepted the order, and the deputy chief also personally led the team. The opponent in the deputy bureau is from the Mei country. Do we really want to intercept them? In the action convoy, the confidant who was riding in the same car as the deputy director asked his leader. In fact, he had always been a little uneasy about this matter in his heart. Deputy director. I'm just a deputy director. If I want to curry favor with the Li family, I have to go into battle personally and take the greatest risk with second-class credit. After saying that, he saw that his cronies still looked scared, and immediately told him. Don't worry, the intelligence shows that the other party is just a second lieutenant. Although the Mei people are very powerful, there are many senior Mei people behind the Li family. They will not quarrel with the Li family over a second lieutenant. But, Deputy Director, nothing. Today you and I are trying to build a bright future. If we do it right, we will be successful in the future. If we do it wrong, we will. He did not say the next words, but his cronies already understood the meaning. After a brief struggle, his eyes quickly changed from confusion to determination. I understand, Director, I will make a future for myself today. Deputy Director, I just value your kid's aggressiveness. Don't worry, nothing will happen. We are working for the Li family. His words seemed to be comforting his men, but in fact, he was speaking more to himself. On the main transportation road from Seoul to the Yongsan-Mei Army Garrison Base. That's the car. One of Li Shengyan's security guards pointed at the approaching car and said that he was also sent to cooperate with the Hangguo Police's operation. Sir, there seems to be something going on ahead. Mike looked at the Hangguo Police who had laid all the ground thorns in front of him, and turned to report to Robert in the back row. Our tires are explosion-proof, right? Then just force our way through. After receiving Robert's instruction, Mike immediately increased the accelerator, ignored the parking gesture of the police officer in front, rushed over the ground spur, and knocked away the vehicle blocking the road. Boom! Ah! After this collision, even in a special edition Audi bulletproof car with good comfort, the experience inside was not good, which shocked the co-pilot's Hangguo translator. Deputy Director, they forced their way through the checkpoint and drove directly towards the May Army base. The voice of the subordinate he hated most came through the intercom. The deputy chief of the Seoul Metropolitan Police Department cursed the other person in his heart for being useless and had no good words in his mouth. What do you do for a living? Did the police station raise you for so long just to be a loser? These words were undoubtedly very serious, and the scolded police officer had no idea why he had offended the deputy director. Deputy Director, that's enough, stop yelling. If someone runs away, won't you drive to chase him? No matter what method you use, you must catch him. Click. After saying this, he immediately hung up the phone. Snort. Director, there's no need to get angry over such a trivial matter. We still have armed SWAT police behind us. The murderer will never escape our grasp. Deputy Director, you still feel comfortable. I'm actually not angry about the prisoner's escape, but because some people are so disrespectful. Siba. The police officer who was scolded did not dare to disobey the order. Even if he was angry, he could not vent it on the phone, let alone vent it now, because there were outsiders around him. As he got into the car and started the car, he cursed his superior in his mind. In the car on the other side, Robert himself was not idle. Of course, he would not just hope to solve the problem by running back to the Majan base. As for Lieutenant General Roberts' question, I think we should be clear about. At the presidential residence, Anthony was holding an emergency video conference, abruptly gathering a group of old men in their 70s and 80s together in the early morning. Ring ring ring. But at the most critical moment of the meeting, a phone call came. He didn't want to answer it at first, but when he saw the name, he had no choice but to put the phone to his ear. Anthony's behavior in answering the phone undoubtedly made the people in the video conference very dissatisfied. After all, they all turned off their mobile phones during the meeting, so they decided to choke Anthony out. Lieutenant General Robert called for something. Anthony obviously saw what these old guys were thinking, so he deliberately said this. Not to mention the effect was quite obvious, and the scene was almost silent. I helped make country kill a thug who opposed freedom and democracy in Han country. At the same time, I also discovered more opposition forces through him, including financial groups and government personnel. Robert said matter-of-factly, and put two big hats on others out of nothing. Anthony, what? There is such a thing. Then their power comes from Northern Han or? At first, he really believed Robert's words, which made him a little nervous unconsciously, but when the other party said the last sentence, he basically knew what happened. Robert, it's not those countries. I feel that the people behind it are the largest financial groups in the cold country. Their leaders may have some serious intentions. How long has Robert been in the cold country? Anthony calculated in his mind that it would only take a few hours at most. How could he find out anything in such a short period of time? It's probably because the Lee family provoked him. Anthony had already made a rough guess in his mind, and he also keenly observed that the problem he faced now was actually one, whether to protect the Lee family or help Robert. This kind of question hardly stayed in his mind for a second before Anthony had already made a decision. I really didn't expect that the Lee family would be such a scum. Don't worry, Mr. Lieutenant General, we will contact the Han government immediately to solve this cancerous problem. The Lee family's consortium is indeed powerful in the Han Kingdom. Someone from the Han Kingdom once said this. In the cold country, you have been using Sengsing's products all your life. If you lose or don't use them, even a normal life will become a luxury for ordinary people. The problem can be seen from this sentence, and behind the three-star group or consortium is the Lee family, and behind the Lee family is the Mae-Guo consortium. In the final analysis, the conflict of interest is that the Lee family is just the agent of Mae-Guo's Ihan, and the honor and disgrace of their family is just a matter of a word from the top management of Mae. One side is an agent that can be abandoned at any time and can be quickly cultivated in just a little time, while the other side is a humanoid world-destroying weapon with the ability to destroy heaven and earth. Put yourself in someone else's shoes and think about it. If you were a senior member of the United States, who would you help when there was a conflict between the two? Well, it's not just the Lee family. Please listen to the sirens outside my window. As he spoke, Robert stretched out his cell phone from the window, and immediately Anthony on the other end of the phone heard the alarm sound of, "Woo, woo." "Anthony, what do you mean? Mr. Lieutenant General, are you chasing criminals?" "On the contrary, Mr. President, if being chased by the police counts as a criminal, I think I am what you call a criminal." Robert was still in the mood to joke with Anthony, but he couldn't understand how panicked the president was. "Anthony, Dolly, the commander of the station in the cold, has really neglected his duty. Where is your position? I will contact him immediately." "It's on the only road from Seoul to Yongsan Base." "Well, actually, you don't have to be so nervous. They can't hurt me." Robert didn't expect Anthony's reaction to be so big. After knowing his location, he hurriedly contacted Dolly using another communication device. From a distance, he could hear Anthony's scolding voice and asked him to send troops immediately. It felt like, as if he was in a very dangerous situation and could burp at any time. "Anthony, no, no, no. Lieutenant General Robert, please don't take your life seriously. You are now the Lieutenant General of the Mei Kingdom, and you are the pillar and face of the country." Although Anthony said this in his mouth, what he really wanted to say in his heart was, "That's enough. Why do idiots keep messing with this guy who loses control of his temper easily? If Robert destroys the earth when he gets angry, how can we still play?" "Robert, haha, I will pay more attention in the future and try to keep myself safe, haha. I have to say that good words always make people feel happy." Even though Robert knew that Anthony's words were probably not sincere, he felt comfortable listening to them. "Anthony, perhaps my greatest achievement in my life is to successfully persuade you not to take risks. To be honest, I feel that the United Nations should award me a World Outstanding Contribution Award." "Ha, you're pretty good at saying it or not." Robert was in a good mood after being praised by Anthony's kind words. He was not afraid of whether the other party had any conspiracy or the like, because he didn't have to be afraid at all. His absolute strength was his confidence. Even before hanging up the phone, Anthony was filled with endless compliments. "Ha, that's interesting." At the same time, the pursuit behind him never stopped, and as time went by, there were originally only one police car and there began to be more. Squeak. Suddenly there was a harsh brake sound, and Robert couldn't help but lean forward slightly in the back seat. "Mike, sir, we seem to be surrounded." On the road more than 10 meters ahead, several police cars had blocked the road, and roadblocks were also placed on both sides of the road. At the same time, heavily armed special police officers aimed their rifles at them. "If you can't run away, then don't run away at all. Just wait, someone will come to solve the problem in a while." Robert didn't panic at all about this situation. If possible, he would even like to drink a cup of tea and look at the scenery outside the window. Director and others have turned off the flames and are probably planning to surrender. Deputy Director. "Well, very good. It seems that the Mei people are no more than this. Let the special police come forward quickly, but be sure to catch them alive." Yes, he was about to lead people up to arrest Mike, but at this moment something strange happened. Boom! Suddenly an F-22 fighter jet flew past in the sky. Its low-altitude passing attitude seemed to be warning something. Director, Deputy Director, what are you afraid of? It just happened to pass by. Keep going." Boom, boom, boom. But as soon as he finished speaking, 3 more fighter jets of the same model flew over the area at low altitude. At this time, the deputy chief of the Seoul Police Department began to panic. Before he could react further, several helicopters arrived above them. Everyone put down their weapons immediately. Repeat that everyone put down their weapons. In the sky, the U.S. military helicopters shouted into the loudspeakers while allowing combatants to quickly enter the conflict area through rope descent. After coming down, these Mei soldiers, without exception, approached Robert's car and confronted the Hangwo police with guns. Director, the shouts of his cronies brought him back to his senses. At this moment, the deputy director had only one thought left. Let me make a call. However, Mei Jun obviously would not let him get what he wanted. Before the deputy director's call was made, he was pushed to the ground by Mei Jun soldiers who arrived later. "Don't move. Put down your weapon immediately. Papa." Seeing that all the officers had been arrested, the remaining Hangwo police had no intention of resisting. They all discarded their weapons and surrendered simply. At the same time, at an emergency meeting initiated by the acting president in the United States, senior officials were expressing their opinions. The Lee family's affairs are nothing more than trivial matters. If they offend the wrong people, they should pay the price. There is nothing to discuss. It's true. They always have to take responsibility for their actions. I think what we should be concerned about now is whether Robert has any intention of getting close to that country. Anthony, I plan to send a CIA agent to get close to him. You can stay close as long as you don't cause anything to happen. I don't want to see the news of the unexpected death of the acting president again. Anthony, thank you for your concern. Unlike when I took office, I plan to use necessary and gentle methods to obtain information this time. As you know, no man can resist that move. It's a good idea, let's wait and see. Robert, who was far away in the cold country, didn't know that a plan against him had been secretly formulated. However, if he knew the contents of the plan, he would be hard-pressed to be angry, and he might even be able to cooperate uncontrollably. Dolly assured Robert in front of him that he had received clear instructions from the president and would properly solve the problems he encountered. Thank you very much. By the way, I want to ask you something. Can you help me check the identity of the reporter this morning? It would be best to know where she is now. At this time, Robert had not forgotten that there was a foreign language course tonight. Seeing that it was getting late, he felt that it was time to study. However, due to his negligence in the morning, he didn't even ask for the person's identity, so now he had to ask someone. Dolly. Oh, this is a matter. Okay, I'll send someone to ask. After saying that, he walked aside and made a phone call. In less than 10 minutes, he walked back and said to Robert, I found out that her name is Jong Yunshi. She is a reporter from Hangguo Daily. She should be at the newspaper office in Seoul now. She will get off work in about 20 minutes. Robert thought that Dolly had found out the other party's information so clearly just by making a phone call. It seems that your intelligence work has been done very well. The results are coming so soon. While talking, he gave the other party a thumbs up, which made Dolly a little embarrassed. He had actually investigated Jong Yunshi's identity early in the morning, just to distract Robert's attention. What he didn't expect was that he didn't put the bait himself, and the fish came over and bit the hook himself. Dolly, how dare you neglect the lieutenant general's question? After patting him for fear, Robert found another car and sat down. When Mike saw this, he immediately ran over and sat in the driver's seat. Can you find the address of Seoul Hanguk Daily? Mike, no problem. So after Robert nodded in agreement, Mike started the military jeep and drove towards the place Robert said. It's really troublesome. Seeing Robert walking away, Dolly looked at the Hangguo Special Police and policemen who were being escorted by Mei Jun, and murmured in a low voice. Because he has one more thing to deal with next, which is to raid the home of the largest chaebol in the cold country. This is much more difficult than controlling the police in the cold country. It might even lead to a bloody incident, so Dolly feels annoyed. How did you find this? At the entrance of Hangguo Daily, Robert, who had been waiting for a long time, successfully met Jong Yunshi. Someone gave me the information that you were here. You won't forget it, right? You promised to teach me the cold language this morning. Jong Yunshi. I thought you were joking. After all, when Robert asked to learn Hanyu, she was ready to teach him, but she said she had no time in the morning and had to wait until evening. But the problem was that Robert didn't ask for her contact information until she left, so normal people would regard what he said before as a joke. In fact, Jong Yunshi really hoped that this was a joke. It was really scary for someone like Robert to hurt people at every turn, even seriously. Aren't I standing here right now? This is no joke. Things always backfired, so Jong Yunshi had no choice but to accept it. After all, she did agree. Okay, then where should we study? But she still had a bottom line. She wanted the place with the best classrooms in the library. If Robert proposed something weird, she would definitely reject it directly. Let's eat. Let's go have a meal first. I think you are hungry too, right? Gulu. As soon as he asked, Jong Yunshi's stomach growled. Because Robert had too much influence on her in the morning, she had been adjusting her mentality after reporting to the club, which led to her not eating well at noon. It's a little bit. Okay then, let's go and eat the food first. Robert immediately led Zhang Yunxi into a military jeep. This kind of vehicle was unique to the Mei army and drove almost sideways on the streets of Han country. Even red lights could be run through at will. Even if it arouses dissatisfaction among some people, it can be ignored on the grounds that it is being practiced. Where to eat? Zhang Yunxi had already known that Robert had a military background, so Zhang Yunxi was not surprised that he could ride in a military vehicle. In fact, today she had already felt the terror of having a Meijin background. Their Hangguo Daily was considered to be the top group of media in Han. But at the top, after her photographer was seriously injured by Mei Jun, she chose to keep silent about the news. Even Zhang Yunxi's editor-in-chief even talked to her specifically to ask her to keep silent about what happened. Zhang Yunxi, you can eat wherever you want, whatever you want. I really didn't mean that. Robert looked at Zhang Yunxi, who turned around and was about to leave, and explained. Zhang Yunxi, do you think I can't see it? Why do you come to the hotel to eat? Then you can go up and stay one night after eating. I'm not one of those casual people. She saw through Robert's little trick, and there was no embarrassment on his face. Instead, he said calmly, don't get me wrong, I've eaten in this restaurant. I thought there was a dish that was quite delicious, so I wanted to take you to try it. But since you're afraid that I'll hurt you, forget it. Zhang Yunxi, really? He looked at the serious Robert and felt a little nervous that he might be too nervous, but when he looked at the hotel door not far away, he was still afraid in his heart. Seeing the fear on the other side's face, Robert knew that his original plan was useless. Since the other side didn't want to do it, he lost interest. Since you don't want to go inside, you have to find a place to eat, right? You can find a place to eat, so you can rest assured, right? Robert said this sincerely, and he was indeed hungry. Zhang Yunxi, okay, let me show you the way. Turn left first. She seemed to want to leave this place very much, and her expression seemed to be afraid that something would rush out of the hotel and swallow her. Sir, this, Mike, who was driving, did not immediately act according to Zhang Yunxi's words, but looked at Robert. Well, let's go. Robert was very satisfied with Mike's behavior. No matter what the other person thought, he just had to show his attitude. Did I forget something? Immediately, Robert thought in his mind, and suddenly realized that he seemed to have hurriedly returned to the Mei army base to talk to Dolly. Oh, right. Patting his head, he remembered that the purpose of his return was not to hide at all, but to talk to Dolly about Mike's promotion. Robert actually already has a plan in mind, which is to cultivate his own power. After all, he can't call President Mayor Dean every time he encounters something, right? She turned around and looked at Zhang Yunxi, who had been keeping a distance from her. At this time, a ray of sunlight happened to shine on her face. Those perfect facial features were definitely not something ordinary people could resist. Mike, do you have contact information? But no matter how beautiful this person is, he is not his, because the other person, Robert, even forgot about business before, and now he is ready to make amends. Sir, you are really joking. I don't see the commander that often, and I haven't even said a few words. How could there be? Robert's words made Mike seem a little embarrassed. He, Mike, was only a second lieutenant. Compared with Dolly, who had the rank of Major General as the commander of the garrison, the disparity in status meant that the two of them had little to do with each other. But Mike is not completely helpless. Although he does not have Dolly's contact information, his superior still knows the phone number. Hey, Lieutenant General Robert asked me to ask. Captain. What do you mean, Mr. Lieutenant General? Okay, I'll report it to the boss right away. Just like this, after reporting layer by layer, Dolly himself learned from the colonel next to him that Robert wanted to contact him. It's over so soon. It seems that this person's health is not very good. The first thing Dolly thought of was that question, and he felt a little disdain in his heart. But of course he wouldn't bring this disdain into reality. The president's bizarre death was still fresh in his mind, and Dolly didn't want to challenge it. Oh, Lieutenant General Robert wants to contact me. Don't bother me, I'll call him directly. After saying that, he walked aside and looked away. At this moment, he and a group of Mei soldiers were taking over the Blue House. Mr. Lieutenant General, I heard that you were looking for me. Within 5 minutes, Dolly knew what had happened and called Robert immediately. I have something to tell you. Lieutenant Mike, who is driving for me, I see that he has extraordinary abilities, so I plan to promote him to the rank of major, understand? Robert's tone was completely informing, but Dolly did not dare to be angry, because Robert was higher than him in terms of strength and military rank. Dolly, Lieutenant Mike, okay, I received the order from Lieutenant General. This matter will be implemented within a week. Well, as soon as possible. After saying that, he hung up the phone and faced the astonished eyes of Zhang Yunxi and Mike, who was so excited that he could not speak incoherently. Sir, I really don't know what to say. Robert, relax, you will be a major in a few days, and I will have many things to trouble you with in the future. Mike nodded firmly and concentrated on driving, while Zhang Yunxi, who was sitting next to Robert in the back seat, felt that everything he heard was very unreal. Who are you? Curiosity gradually filled her heart. Zhang Yunxi was curious about what kind of person could appoint a major in just one sentence. Lieutenant General for the time being. I wonder if the place has arrived. Robert didn't want to stay on this topic for a long time. He pointed to the scenery outside the car and asked Zhang Yunxi. It seems so. The place Zhang Yunxi chose was a roadside stall. The reason why he chose it was because there were so many people. Robert would have some consideration if he wanted to eat hard. After Zhang Yunxi learned Robert's identity, he subconsciously thought that he was a child of a large family in the Mei Kingdom. After all, if he was not older than 30 or even 25 years old, he would have no background and just talk to a dog. I don't believe it. The bench is a little oily. I have some paper towels in my bag to wipe it off. She was originally worried that Robert would not adapt to this place because he was used to being pampered, but it turned out that this worry was completely unnecessary. Sit down. Why are you looking at me? Robert sat down on a small stool casually, and Mike was forced to sit down at his request. Now Zhang Yunxi was the only one on the spot wiping the stool with paper. It feels like she is the one who is pampered. What do you eat? After hurriedly wiping the stool and sitting down, Zhang Yunxi picked up the menu in his hand and asked in English. Because the menu was full of slang, Robert couldn't understand it, and Mike could speak some slang, but couldn't understand all the words. I'm almost starving. I don't know Han Yu. So, let's get 10 skewers of each. You can choose the vegetarian one you like. Robert looked at the full menu and expected that there would be no shortage of meat skewers. After all, who is a serious person who doesn't come to barbecue for the meat? Are you sure you can finish eating this? Don't worry, it's no problem. At Robert's strong request, Zhang Yunxi ordered all the meat on the menu, plus 2 boxes of beer. Zhang Yunxi, you won't be able to study if you're drunk at night. Robert listened to her words and looked at the beer in his hand, feeling insulted. After banging the bottle with Mike, Robert blew on the bottle and drank a bottle, then looked at Zhang Yunxi with a raised brow. Can drinking beer make you intoxicated? Who did you listen to? This can only be regarded as a drink at best. After saying that, I picked up a skewer of barbecue and started to feast on it. When I was thirsty, I took a sip of cold beer. Not to mention how wonderful it felt. Is it really that delicious? Zhang Yunxi actually had a bottle of drink in his hand to quench his thirst at this time, but after looking at Robert and Mike's happy expressions after drinking heavily, the curiosity in his heart suddenly became unbearable. No, why don't you try it? When Robert saw her expression, he immediately rolled his eyes and immediately took out a bottle of cold beer from a box and handed it to her hand. Next, he didn't make his purpose too obvious. He didn't persuade Zhang Yunxi to drink, but kept banging bottles with Mike. Hiccup. Phew, this smells really weird. Zhang Yunxi couldn't help but take a sip, but instantly felt a strange smell coming from it. This was her first time drinking beer. It's not like she has never drank wine before, but they were all low alcohol and sweet fruit wines. Compared to the slightly sweet and refreshing fruit wines, the taste of beer seemed less suitable for women. Forget it, the smell is too weird. At this time, 2 red clouds appeared on her face. She didn't know whether it was because she was not used to the taste of beer, or it was a reaction after drinking too much. I only took 1 sip, so I shouldn't have drank too much. Robert sighed in his heart. It took nearly 40 minutes for Robert and the others to finish eating, and Zhang Yunxi also offered to take him to a place where he was studying. Originally, Someone had high hopes and wondered whether he would go to Zhang Yunshi's home to study. You chose the library to teach me Hanyu. After arriving at the place, Robert looked at the sign of the Seoul City Library and was so surprised that he opened his mouth wide. He thought about countless possibilities, even the scene of being under a lot of monitors, but he just never thought about it in the library. Pavilion. Zhang Yunshi. Yes, there are complete Hanyu learning materials here. When you are tired from studying at night, it is very convenient to have a lounge where you can stay for a night with a few thousand hanyuan. All right, seeing this situation, Robert could only accept his fate. There was little or no room for maneuver in this popular library. Mike, just go back first and pick me up here tomorrow morning. Or if you are interested, you can go in and find a book. Robert said to Mike, who was following him like a bodyguard. Because of the boring study that was destined to follow, he was not sure whether Mike liked that atmosphere. You must know that the basic quality after entering the library is not to make loud noises, and even some low-pitched communication must be restrained. This results in that although there may be many people in the library, there is almost no sound. For those who like reading, this atmosphere is simply heaven, but for those who like movement and dislike silence, it is simply hell. Ah, then I'd better come tomorrow morning, sir. Obviously Mike doesn't seem to be the kind of person who likes to read quietly, and Robert also understands in his heart. Imagine a person from the Mei Kingdom staying in a library in the Cold Kingdom, facing a pile of books but not even knowing the words, and unable to get any information to pass the time. This is okay for a short time, but who will suffer if it lasts for a long time? Come on. Okay, let's start with the most basic teaching. In the library, Zhang Yunshi took Robert to sit down in a deserted place. After finding a pile of books, she started teaching at a certain distance. Oh. In the past, Robert often lamented that time flies by so fast, but now he suddenly experienced the feeling when he was in school again, that the days seemed like years. The power of learning a dharma is so terrifying. It can actually distort the law of time. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. At the same time, he was really bored. Zhang Yunshi was concentrating on teaching the knowledge of Hanyu. Robert really had no interest in simply learning Hanyu, but he couldn't help but learn it if he was so dedicated. Hey, as I said, it's just like learning one more skill. Comforting himself in his heart, Robert decided to study tonight. No matter how beautiful Zhang Yunshi was, he couldn't resist being uninterested in him. As the saying goes, twisted melons are not sweet, and Robert is not the kind of person who is so thirsty that he insists on eating twisted melons. 2 hours later. Why do you feel so sleepy today? After stretching, Zhang Yunshi's perfect curves were revealed in front of Robert, but he just glanced at them and was not in the mood to read anymore, because the feeling of being able to see but not eat is one of the most uncomfortable tortures in the world. How about we stop here? It won't be too late to learn next time when we have time. Zhang Yunshi didn't expect that Robert would take the initiative to bring this up. In her feeling, he would want to stay with her longer. Okay, then you can set up a quick lounge here, and I'll go home first. No matter what Robert's purpose was, Zhang Yunshi was really tired, so after hurriedly explaining, he walked outside the library. After answering behind the person's back, Robert looked at the swans flying away and touched his chin, feeling really bored. He happened to be tired at this moment, so he was going to find a rest room to sleep. Ring ring ring. Suddenly Robert's phone rang. In the quiet library, this was completely a social death scene. He quickly turned down the volume, and after showing an apologetic expression to the people around him for being disturbed, he found a corner where no one was. Tony, why is he calling at this time? Looking at the caller, Robert muttered, and then picked up the phone. Tony, you have no idea what I got up to. As soon as the call was connected, he heard Tony's excited voice coming from the other side, and Robert couldn't help but become confused. Tony, come to my house. I'm in the laboratory now, but before that I really want to tell you, Robert, you are the most lucky in your life to know such an excellent friend like me. Robert's curiosity was immediately aroused, and he wanted to know what could make him the luckiest boy. I'll be there soon. After hanging up the phone, Robert immediately went to find the toilet and never came out after going in. Is he really not going to chase him out and take a look? However, What Robert didn't know was that Zhang Yunxi had been waiting outside for a while. After she hurried out, she remembered that it was not safe for a girl to go home so late, so she prepared to ask Robert to give her a lift. But just walking back like this would make people feel like asking for help. Zhang Yunxi, who had already built up a sense of superiority in her heart, felt that Robert would chase her out as a gentleman and send her home. What a stupid head, huh? For 10 minutes, Zhang Yunxi didn't even see a man, let alone Robert. What she didn't know was that Robert was no longer in Han country at this time, and even if he was still there, if he knew Zhang Yunxi's psychology at this time, he would probably be disgusted and refuse all her requests. Is this what you call, great luck? Robert looked carefully at the watch Tony handed him. It should be said that it was very delicate and could withstand careful inspection, but calling it a great luck would be too far-fetched. Tony. Hey man, don't underestimate it, okay? Look what this thing is. Tony saw the disappointed look on Robert's face and felt that his invention had been despised. He quickly took the watch away and wanted to prove it to himself. I saw that he held the watch in his hand and pressed it, and a gate to space appeared without Robert's control. What? Robert hurriedly felt that there was indeed no trace of power leaking out from his body, so the problem could only be with Tony. Interesting. As soon as Robert's space power exploded, he immediately locked the watch in Tony's hand and opened the space door. At least the energy came from it, and that was actually Robert's energy. Tony. Of course it's interesting. This is a brilliant idea that I came up with after spending the whole night without sleeping. Its principle is to install an electric core in the watch and be driven by it. Tony tried to explain the underlying logic of watch technology to Robert in professional terms, but it was obvious that he overestimated the other party. Robert. Tony, I think you can keep it simple. Okay. After Tony talked for a while, Robert was still confused, so he interrupted loudly, and Tony, who was just talking about the point, was interrupted like this, and he instantly felt that the thing he had just pulled out had been forcefully stuffed. It's just as uncomfortable to go back. But there is no way. Why didn't Tony pull out the right thing from the right place? If he went to a stranger's house to pull it out, wouldn't he have to be forced back? You can basically understand its principle as, I store your energy in a small part made of new elements, and since the energy will be consumed over time even if it is not used, my solution is to give it a lock, and the key to open it is electricity. Tony calmed down for a while and finally got over the uncomfortable feeling. Robert was the kind of person who had no basic knowledge at all. He was completely unfamiliar with this field. If Tony chose to speak to him in professional terms, he was simply asking for trouble. Fortunately, he understood the truth later and began to explain it in words that people can understand. Oh, what you mean is that through this device, the use time of the space gate can be extended, right? Robert used normal people's understanding of ability to prove that he was a normal person, which made Tony very happy because his decision to take his friend to the hospital for a visit could be postponed or cancelled. Now that Robert can finally get his point, Tony quickly throws out his next brilliant idea and how to deal with it. I implanted a chip inside so that it can determine a destination. As long as there are clear coordinates, it can theoretically appear anywhere on the Earth. Just like this. Tony threw the pen next to his hand into the space door that had not been closed. A new space door appeared a few meters away, and the pen that Tony had just thrown fell out of the horse. Not only that, seeing Robert's expression of admiration, Tony's face was filled with joy, but he was not satisfied with this because there was still something left to show. I have also considered the reliability of this thing. Once the door is opened, the door will remain open until the close button of the watch is pressed, or the energy is exhausted. After saying that, he threw the watch directly in, and it fell out of another door in an instant. Papa. After seeing what Tony had created, Robert was very optimistic about it. If it could be produced now, its value would probably be inestimable. Tony. Well, now that we've talked about practicality, we have to discuss the problem. In fact, I have tried to solve it myself, but no matter which method works, there will still be hidden dangers. What's the hidden danger, Tony? This. He was seen fiddling with his watch for a while, and then a blue light suddenly flashed in the space, and at the same time, a blue lightsaber took shape. The power of this thing is much greater than that of any weapon. No matter how hard an object is, it will be useless because it is not a physical attack at all. Tony controlled the lightsaber with his watch and gently pulled it on something made of high-strength titanium alloy. He saw that there was no obstruction or setback, and wherever the lightsaber touched the thing, it would be swallowed up. Oh, you're talking about this. Isn't that simple? Robert already understood what Tony meant. The so-called hidden danger was that although the application of space energy was convenient, it was too dangerous. The lightsaber is just a thing made according to human thinking. If there are lawless people in the future, with a little bit of brainpower, they can think of condensing the power of space into a small ball with the file size of a bullet. The effect of hitting people will not only be good but also save money. Tony, simple. How long will it take to solve this simple problem? He had been thinking about this for several hours, but he had no idea at all. Now that Robert had just told him it was simple when he arrived, Tony was somewhat unconvinced. Continue to show off the shape of your sword, look at mine. After Robert finished speaking, the blue light on his body suddenly began to flow, and something on the earth was being modified. Oh, you must have cheated. What happened in front of Tony when Robert closed his eyes and was busy? The original lightsaber disappeared, and no matter what method he tried, he could not make it. And except for the space gate, other styles of space power can no longer be used on the watch. How's it going? Is the problem solved? Robert raised his eyebrows at Tony's surprise. Tony, it is indeed very powerful, but let me make it clear here that what I am referring to is your ability, not you as a person. Is there a difference? Robert was speechless at Tony's words, but he didn't want to argue with the other party on this topic. He should obviously be concerned about another thing now. Is this thing productive? This is what Robert is concerned about. If ordinary people can use the space gate to travel, the profits will be huge amounts of. This is like Robert finding an oil mine that belongs to him when the global energy is exhausted. The output and price can be controlled by him. What does this mean? Endless wealth, mass production. This is almost immediately. Jarvis. Yes, sir. How can I help you? Next is the moment when Tony's super ability is revealed, and the factory's problems are solved almost instantly. It seems you have been prepared. Robert watched the entire process from the side. In just 2 minutes, Tony completed all of this. Who would believe that he was not prepared? Tony. Of course, I was just worried about hidden dangers before, but now it seems they are no longer a problem. The only question now is on you. I mean, how much production can your ability support? When Tony asked this question, Ling Nantong clearly saw a hint of cunning in his eyes, which made the originally normal inquiry no longer strange. You just mean to ask me if it's okay? Facing Robert's question, Tony did not answer, but chose to look at him with a flattering expression. Snort. Robert chose to answer him with practical actions, and suddenly a blue ball of light appeared out of thin air in the space, a ball of space energy that was compressed to the extreme by Robert. Oh, don't give it to me. Seeing the boss condensing another blue ball, Tony didn't care at first, but a few seconds later he discovered that although the shape of the ball had not changed, its color had become darker. And the surrounding space seems to be distorted as its color changes and deepens. Tony was not stupid. He immediately realized the danger of this thing and quickly avoided it. Ha ha ha, don't be afraid. There is nothing dangerous about this thing. Even though it is small, it will definitely be enough for you to use it for a year and a half. Tony, if you lie to me, then I guarantee that even if I die, I will curse you in hell. Don't say that. I'm going to heaven, take it. The two made a joke, and then Tony became less worried. With Robert's repeated assurances, he tentatively put his hand on the dark blue ball. Is it really okay? Seeing that nothing happened to his hand, Tony breathed a sigh of relief and at the same time lowered his guard and put the basketball in his hand. Seriously, Robert, the one you gave me before was used up after I bought tens of thousands of watches. This thing with the same file size can really be used for a year. Holding the dark blue ball in front of him and looking at it carefully, Tony found that as his hand moved, the space around it also had a magical distortion. Of course, this cannot be the ability that Tony possesses, but something in his hand. It should have a large amount of internal storage, right? Seeing Tony asking questions like a curious baby, Robert decided to satisfy his thirst for knowledge. Of course, if you don't believe it, place an explosive device next to it. If you don't run to the other side of the earth, you will be honored to see the center of the earth. Of course, that's if you can survive until then. After hearing what he said, Tony quickly wanted to throw the things in his hands to the ground, but at that moment he thought of the horrific consequences of doing so, and had no choice but to give up. I really believed you're evil, Robert. You promised that it was safe. Yeah, you don't need to blow it up with bombs, so it's pretty safe. In order to verify his words, Robert took the blue ball from Tony's hand, and not only that, he also patted it on the ground casually. At the same time, on the other side of the United States, Fury looked at the blue Rubik's Cube in front of him and thought about it for a long time. Robert said that his ability came from this thing. Can you analyze whether what he said is true? Being brought here by Fury with a high salary and some coercion, Zellweger, a nationally renowned professor of astronomy and natural sciences, replied from the side. It's hard for me to judge just by the video information you provided, unless. Fury. Oh, don't say it. I know that unless I go to him to provide some energy for your research, right? Professor, don't have such thoughts, I don't want to come to him about this again. Zellweger. Then I can't confirm. Fury looked at him for a long time, and then sighed after confirming that the other person was not lying. Hey, forget it, let's put this issue aside for now, let's experiment and see what happens if people come into contact with this thing without protection. Zellweger is a professor after all. He instinctively wanted to resist such inhumane experiments, but right next to him, someone spoke first. I'm familiar with this, teach me. Looking at the person who took over this job, Fury felt very relieved about him. Try to pick those death row inmates with more serious crimes first. The person leaving had a quiver and a handful of arrows on his back. After listening to Fury's words, he waved back coolly. I think maybe we can try it with animals first. Zellweger looked at the retreating figure, and finally couldn't help but give Fury his own suggestion. Oh, great professor, great doctor. Those people are all serious criminals, and they will be executed by the government sooner or later. Are you so compassionate that you want to intercede for these people? Felon. Okay. After learning the identity of the person who conducted the unknown experiment, Zellweger was not so hard to accept what was going to happen next. Ling ling. With the sound of chains hitting the ground, a friendly-looking prisoner was brought up. He is a heavy prisoner. After seeing this person's face, Zellweger couldn't help but speak out, and Fury used the simplest and most direct way to prove the facts of the matter. Doctor, sometimes don't trust your eyes and feelings too much, because that may harm yourself. Fury handed the tablet in his hand to Zellweger, which contained all the information of the incoming prisoners and their criminal records. Zellweger himself just turned the first page and discovered that this man had been accused of rape, murder and many other crimes, and there was sufficient evidence. He was so crazy that even his family members would not let him go. Oh my God, take this thing away. Just after reading the text description and a few evidence and pictures, Zellweger completely lost his desire to be a good person. On the contrary, he still has the urge to execute this scumbag himself immediately. Okay. Go over and pick up that thing. Seeing that the only virgin at the scene was dealt with, Barton immediately patted the serious criminal on the shoulder. He didn't know what method he used to make this devil who was not afraid of death obey his orders. At the same time, there were countless infrared rays aimed at the criminal's head at the scene, and there were even people with missiles aiming there. The purpose of their existence was to prevent criminals from going on a rampage after obtaining super abilities. But these preparations seemed to be too cautious. The felon obediently grasped the tesseract. The moment his skin touched it, the Rubik's Cube seemed to be activated. Suddenly, the light shone brightly, and the cosmic nebula was also projected into the empty laboratory, occupied. With the last scream, the felon was pulled into the endless universe. During the whole process, he screamed because he could not resist. Do you want to continue? Zellweger looked at the criminal who disappeared almost instantly. The speed was so fast that he didn't even get any useful information, so he asked. Fury, I guess we have no shortage of applicants who are looking forward to going to space, right? What he meant was that those criminals, after all, just put people into random space without any protective equipment. That is not a recreational activity. Barton. Yes, we are indeed not short, and we even have sufficient reserves. After saying that, he gestured to the back, and a new prisoner was immediately pushed in. This time, Barton didn't have to go outside to look for him personally. The next process is the same as before, with the criminal touching the blue Rubik's Cube under the cordial care of Barton and his face full of infrared rays. History is also surprisingly similar, and this criminal also failed to escape the fate of being sent away by the Tesseract. Come again. Fury was not frustrated by this, but calmly called the next criminal in. Immediately afterwards, criminals were sent in one after another, and without exception, they were all sent away neatly. Silwiger even put down his pen at this time. He felt that there was no need to waste ink on this. How many are next? Fury asked Barton on the side. He saw criminals disappearing like dumplings one after another. He couldn't remember which one the new one was. Patton. The 30th, or maybe the 40th. It turns out that no one can remember accurate numbers in such boring and repetitive things, not even a top agent and the head of the top agent. Go up and touch that thing. I hope you can bring me something different. Fury didn't know how many times he had recited these words, but there was nothing he could do if he didn't recite them, because every criminal who came in was in a state of confusion, and someone had to tell them what to do. Gudong. Okay. At this time, the convicted felon's first action was to look underground. What could he see that could make him, with more than a dozen lives on his back, so scared that he could swallow his saliva? Oh, I noticed that since this guy set a precedent, everyone who comes in likes to take a look at this. What do you think after reading this? Do you still have the courage to resist? Fury smiled and kicked the headless corpse on the ground. It couldn't be said that it was headless. His head was still there, but it was almost impossible to see clearly. After all, it had been hit by dozens of bullets. In ancient times, there was the so-called thousands of arrows piercing the heart, but today a strong man used his life to create a new way of death, 10,000 bullets piercing the head. Where there is oppression, there is resistance. This principle applies even to felons who have lost their humanity. After seeing their companions enter and never come out, smart people will understand that once they enter, they cannot come out. Instead of waiting for death, why not resist? What if it succeeds? This was Fury's analysis of the psychology of the rebellious criminal, but they only learned one thing after the fact. It turned out that this very brave criminal was short-sighted and color-blind. When countless infrared rays were aimed at him, he might have thought someone's high beam was on. Fortunately, there is only one such weird thing, and the next people cooperate very smoothly. After all, is there any normal person who still has the intention to resist when his face is covered with infrared rays? The criminal whose number no one could remember let out a scream when he came into contact with the Tesseract, and everyone immediately looked away as if it was a muscle reaction. Next, even Fury is no exception. He has no hope now, until a gunshot rings out. Bang! Fury. Who fired the shot? It's me, sir. I found out that this criminal was trying to escape. According to your previous instructions, I shot him in the leg before he showed any aggression. A hidden agent walked into the light and pointed at the criminal on the ground who had injured his leg. Escape. But the new criminal hasn't come in yet. Call the doctor. Stop his bleeding immediately. Fury looked in the direction of the Rubik's Cube and saw that the criminal who had touched the Rubik's Cube just now had not disappeared like the previous ones. This was a major discovery, so he hurriedly looked for a doctor. Sir, his wound has been treated. Should we send him to the hospital now? Fury. Let him touch that thing first, and then decide whether he is worth living. After he finished speaking, someone lifted the criminal's stretcher and lifted him to a position where he could reach out and touch the Rubik's Cube. Then all personnel evacuated, waiting for his performance. You are really crazy. Can you get pleasure from watching me touch this thing? If so, then I will. The severe pain in his legs forced the criminal to obey Fury's orders. If it happened again now, he would definitely not choose to escape when everyone ignored him. After all, the current situation was caused by this. Fury, if you are ready, hurry up. I don't want to see another corpse here that died of excessive blood loss. Criminal, you are really funny. As he spoke, He stretched out his hand towards the Rubik's Cube. Since his previous experience made him not very afraid of this blue thing, he seemed a little casual this time. He originally thought nothing would happen, but... Oh, what's the problem? Fury looked at the criminal who had disappeared again. It was clear that he was fine even if he touched him the first time. Drive Silver, just do the experiment here. It's best to find out the cause as much as possible. If you really can't find it, don't force it. Then we will proceed according to the conditions we discussed before. Barton will assist you during this period, right, Eagle Boy? Fury himself was also very busy, and he didn't have a lot of time to waste here, so after seeing that the results could not be produced in a short period of time, he simply went elsewhere to deal with the matter. Patton. No problem, sir. Fury. Very good. 10 hours passed in a blink of an eye, and finally before Fury was going to sleep, a report was placed by his bedside. 3% probability. Looking at the number of people at the back of the report, the number in the thousands is the number of felons consumed in exchange for this percentage. The 3% probability means that people who touch the Tesseract with their hands have a 3% probability of being safe, and a greater probability of being swallowed. Why? Looking at the consumption figures, Fury couldn't help but sigh. However, he didn't feel sorry for the criminals, but he was wondering why there are so many scum in the United States. Tony's house. Robert, what do you mean when you say we shouldn't produce so many watches? Do you know how much it would cost me to sell a watch factory? Even with my wealth, I can't buy more than a few, you know. Tony said to Robert, and the saliva in his mouth felt like it was about to spurt out, but at this moment a voice sounded that made him embarrassed. Jarvis. Sir, I'm sorry to correct you. In fact, you may not understand the wealth you own. According to my calculations, your wealth is enough to buy another 130 million. Watch factory. Tony. That's enough, Jarvis, turn off your AI intelligence. I really don't know who designed it for you to make you so ignorant of speech. Seeing that his real underwear was exposed, Tony stopped pretending and started asking more practical questions. Why can't we mass produce it now? Robert sat on the chair and saw that Tony was finally able to communicate. He immediately put down his watch and explained to him. Listen to me, Tony, it's not that I don't like your design, but I suddenly realized that if half of the people in the world owned this watch that could use the space gate according to your idea, something terrible would happen. That is, due to the frequent and high-density use of space power, the Earth's space will be unstable, so it is not completely impossible for the sky to collapse and the Earth to collapse. Next, Robert began to explain the hidden dangers to Tony. The reason why he did not talk about the problem before but only now is because Robert himself did not know the existence of this problem. What made him realize this problem was Fury's experiment thousands of miles away. Under Robert's perception, the Tesseract continued to release energy for more than 10 hours. That led to spatial chaos in the area where the Rubik's Cube was located. Although the effect was very small and could be repaired over time, what if billions of people around the world used the power of space frequently? Tony. Okay, your reasons are indeed very good, but what do you think we should do with the watches we produce? Oh, and that factory. Robert. It's simple. We will continue to sell those watches that have been made, but we will leave the pricing power to the market. At the same time, we can also launch a door for transmission to fixed places. I think the government will like that thing. Tony. I hope so. I'd better go to bed first and take action on this matter tomorrow. Robert. Yeah, that's okay. A space door appeared behind him, and Robert left after Tony left. Belinda's house happened to be having dinner at this time. White House. Mr. President, the rebel forces led by the Lee family in South Korea have been uprooted. However, one problem is that although the country has used economic means to pressure some people in Han, the effect does not seem to be obvious. These people only surrendered superficially. Quote, Commander Dolly, who had been busy in South Korea for a long time, finally called Anthony after completing his mission and reporting to his subordinates. Is it possible that these people will join a rebel organization or form another group? Anthony understood what Dolly meant, but he obviously underestimated the Koreans. Dolly, if it was just like this, I wouldn't make this call, but there is an emergency situation. Some chaebols who originally had a monopoly in Han with reliable information are very dissatisfied with our actions this time. The fact that they are suppressed by economic means is only temporary. I suspect that these people may do something to force us to invade, maybe because of some of our promises. This does not rule out the possibility of them using force to overthrow the cold government. Dolly looked at the analysis report in his hand and spoke it to the phone with his own understanding. Anthony also thought about it for a long time. South Korea cannot make any mistakes. The tone was set, and the next step was the specific implementation. Anthony also began to ask Dolly how many people and materials he would need to solve the problem. Mr. President, I feel that with the temper of the Korean people, it is unlikely that they are prepared to bring things to such a standstill. They certainly would not dare to completely fall out with us, so I request sending 5 aircraft carriers to cruise, and deploying another 100,000 troops to conduct exercises in Han, to deter those people. In the old saying of the big country next door, this is called an army that drives away people without fighting. Anthony, 5 ships. Are you crazy or do you think I am crazy? 3 ships at most. As for another military exercise with 100,000 people, I can agree to it. And this operation was arranged by Lieutenant General Robert after all. He has no reason to stand by and watch. As long as you can ask him to take action, then everything will be no problem. It is early morning in South Korea, but on the contrary, it is about to enter late night in the United States. After this night, no one will think that the world will be completely different tomorrow. Today I am honored to introduce to you Stark's latest products, the shuttle watch and the shuttle door. Immediately afterwards, Tony did not talk too much nonsense, but directly demonstrated the function of the so-called shuttle watch in front of the reporters at the press conference. I saw Tony's hand pressing a button, and a space gate immediately appeared in front of him. He calmly walked over and took only one step, but his body appeared in the crowd of reporters more than 10 meters away. Mr. Tony, was your great experiment a success? Tony also demonstrated the same thing at the White House a few months ago, but unlike that big ball, this time he used a small watch to accomplish the same thing. It's so exciting, Mr. Stark, you've made history again by miniaturizing something so great. The reporters at the scene were all extremely excited. They all praised Tony for making history, and as personal witnesses, they also felt a sense of honor in their hearts. Oh, calm down, my friends. No. Don't go around touching me, okay? Tony stood in a group of reporters. At first, those reporters who were normal people immediately turned into his ardent fans after he demonstrated technology that exceeded their cognition. Everyone began to do something to him. In the end, it was thanks to the efforts of on-site security that Tony was able to get out of trouble. When he turned around and looked over, the reporters returned to their serious appearance, giving the impression that the perverts who had been groping just now were not them. Okay, cough. Let's start our main topic today, showing off the most powerful function of this watch. Tony is worthy of being a superhero with an extremely strong heart. After being treated like that, it only took a short time to adjust to his condition and start the next extended function introduction. When everyone was looking forward to it and all the cameras were pointed at him, Tony shouted to the side. Can Jarvis help me connect to the North Pole? I mean, well, when they are ready, although I also know that one night is a bit rushed. Jarvis. No problem at all, sir. As Jarvis's voice fell, a huge amount of screen lit up at the press conference, and the scenery immediately displayed was an ice field. Tony. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you don't mind if I go to the North Pole now and then come back to continue this press conference. In order to demonstrate the function called shuttle watch, Tony went to the North Pole, Iceland, London, Paris and Washington. Stark. At the Stark Industries press conference in California, almost everyone started shouting Tony's name because he allowed people to see miracles. So Mr. Stark, how much will the price of this watch be? After cheering, the crowd gradually calmed down. Immediately, a reporter took advantage of the opportunity to ask Tony, well, I think I have made it clear enough just now. Because the current technology is limited and cannot achieve large-scale mass production, this batch is only available for sale in 1,000 units. As for the price, we will know it in the form of an auction. True to his background as a businessman, Tony came up with a brilliant idea to sell watches at a high price without arousing resentment from others. Later that day, the Schwanzu watch, produced by Stark Company, was delivered to Fury. It can't go anywhere it wants to go, right? If that's the case, how can the security of places like the White House be guaranteed? The agent, who had fully understood the function of the watch before coming here, was very grateful for his caution. Just imagine what would happen if he was questioned by his superiors at this time. Don't worry, sir. Although this watch is said to be able to reach any place in the world when it is sold, Mr. Stark has obviously also considered the issue of world security. Fury. Mr. Tony has designed a program that requires authorization to go to any sensitive location. Before authorization, the function of the watch was only to go to some fixed locations. Fury. Oh, that's it. It seems Tony has thought it through quite well. Let's take it to Dr. Silverweg. Okay, sir. Seeing the agent about to walk out of his office, Fury suddenly remembered something and asked casually. It must have cost a lot of money to buy it, right? A few $100 or a few $1,000. Agent. No offense, sir, but you are too humorous. This watch is almost sold out. Countless rich people want to own it. Even if we use some connections, it will cost us $10 million US. I just got it. PFF'd. Fury. What? 10 million. Ha ha ha. Tony, you are really a master of making money. Watching his account continue to increase, and it will soon exceed the balance of $100 million US, Robert had a smile on his face. Tony, can you try to restrain yourself? Robert, if outsiders see you like this, they will think you are a nouveau riche. I saw that he had gradually begun to distance himself from Robert, as if he was afraid of having anything to do with the current Robert. Don't betray me, I am a nouveau riche, ha ha ha. Looking at the growing numbers, Robert was as happy as a child. More money will be added to your account in the future. I hope you won't go crazy with joy. Tony said with a smile on his face. He was even looking forward to seeing Robert's expression in the future. But at this time, the satisfied expression on Robert's face faded, and it was as if he changed his face and replaced it with an indifferent expression. After all, I am a person with tens of billions of assets. Tony, do you think $100 million US can really make me so happy? Oh, I hope you are really what you said. Tony looked at Robert, whose face was tense and obviously suppressing his expression, and said sarcastically. According to Tony's judgment, someone can't maintain this state of pretending to be calm for long, maybe only 5 days, but... Ha ha ha. 1 billion, Tony, have you seen it? This is 1 billion, ha ha ha. Tony covered his face and was too lazy to pay attention to someone, because in his concept, 1 billion was only a small amount of money, and it would not be too late to be happy when he reached 10 billion. 2 months later, your dividends should be more than 10 billion, right? Why are you so calm this time? Tony and Robert's dividends were 50-50, and Tony paid for watches and new elements. The cost of these items was not worth mentioning in the face of the auction prices of tens of millions. And Robert even exchanged air for dividends. It can be said that both of them paid very little or nothing, but the profits were very high. Robert, 10 billion. Oh, I feel numb, the world is so boring. At this moment, his expression is calm, and he can handle it calmly in the face of tens of billions of wealth. If an outsider is standing here, he can clearly see that he has the so-called aristocratic aura. So the so-called aristocrats are just built up by wealth. In fact, anyone who can give them 10 billion US can become a noble. Tony, I really didn't expect your thinking to progress so quickly. Ring ring ring. Before Robert could be humble, he was interrupted by a phone call. He raised his phone and saw that it was Fury's call. Why is he calling me? Robert muttered, and Tony came over at this time. Tony, you, braised egg, why are you calling me? I remember last time he asked me to join a kids club called the Avengers, haha. So have you joined? Tony was smiling when Robert asked a question that made his smile instantly freeze on his face. It turned out that just when he was happy, he forgot that he seemed to have accepted Fury's invitation. Well, of course I have the duty to defend world peace, but there are some conditions. What about that? You'd better answer the phone first. I'll tell you what it is later, so you'd better answer the phone first. Nodding, Robert was not prepared to embarrass Tony anymore, but chose to answer the phone. Hey, is the world in crisis again? Did you call me? Robert originally just made a joke, but Fury on the other side of the phone was extremely serious. Fury, Lieutenant General Robert, the world is indeed in crisis, and the person who caused all this, I suspect, is not a human at all but an alien. This may turn into an interstellar war. You really put a golden face on human beings. After listening to Fury's words, Robert immediately rolled his eyes unconsciously. The Star Wars he mentioned was probably dropping nuclear bombs into space when a wave of human attacks failed. Fury, Mr. Lieutenant General, I reiterate that this is a very important event. The survival of humanity is at stake because the Tesseract has been taken away. What? When Robert and Tony, who was wearing armor, arrived at the scene, they saw ruins, and Fury stood not far from the ruins and watched them from a distance. Tony, things look bad. Fury, it's not just what it looks like, it's actually very bad. As he spoke, he played a surveillance video in front of Tony and Robert. The image showed most of what happened just now. The camera at the beginning of the picture is focused on the Tesseract in a huge and empty laboratory, where it is being fixed by a device. Does it give off a strong energy? Fury walks into the camera from the corner, and standing next to him are Dr. Sylvig and Barton, also known as Hawkeye. Sylviger, it's enough to kill you, sir, and the energy it emits is still expanding, and it may even have devastating consequences later. Fury, then let the people here step up their evacuation. Eagle Boy, I want you to keep an eye on this place. What do you have to tell me? In the final analysis, Sylvig is not from S.H.I.E.L.D. Barton is the one Fury truly trusts. After looking at Sylvig, who looked slightly embarrassed, Barton chose to tell the truth. Doctor is innocent. I have been guarding here all the time. No one had touched the Rubik's Cube before it moved. If there is any problem, it will not appear on our side. Fury, what do we mean here? Facing the confused Fury, Barton, who had been baptized in scientific knowledge for a long time, explained to him. Yeah, the Rubik's Cube is a door to anywhere in the universe, right? The last question was addressed to Sylviger, but at this moment the Rubik's Cube gave out the most violent reaction, shaking the earth for a moment, leaving Sylviger with no time to answer the question. Bang! As the shaking became more violent, the blue light on the Rubik's Cube became more intense. In the end, even the laboratory, which was as big as a football field, turned into a blue background. When a vortex began to form rapidly with the Rubik's Cube as the center. When everyone noticed and looked over, the vortex had turned into a beam of energy and shot out. The blue energy beams finally converged to form a large light hole, and even this light hole expanded until it finally reached a limit, followed by an explosion-like sound. Pong! Fury! Robert, is that you? As the explosion ended, a figure appeared in the place where the light hole was, and because it was so similar to the ability used by Robert, Fury thought it was him. But when the blue smoke dissipated, Fury finally saw the outline of the figure inside. This was definitely not Robert, because he was not in the habit of holding something. Fury, sir, whoever you are, could you please put down your spear? I don't want what I'm holding to hurt you. When Loki raised his head just now, he instantly felt a few rays of infrared rays shining on his face, and the source of those rays were the black muzzles of the guns. But I want to hurt you. Loki is not afraid of guns. After saying this, he directly picked up what was described as a spear and fired a few rays from it. Several agents were eliminated in an instant. Fury was also one of Loki's targets. If Barton hadn't jumped up and knocked him aside at this moment, he would have been gone. The remaining agents who survived or were not attacked by Loki quickly opened fire. These weapons are extremely lethal to humans, but they always fail to work in the face of some difficult threats. Dang dang dang. The bullet hit Loki and made a sound of metal colliding. The rifle bullet had no effect on him. Chapter 91. Ah, bang. What followed was a one-sided massacre. Even if the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. resisted, it was still to no avail. Sylvig. Quick, Fury, get the shuttle watch and take us away. Patton. Yeah, this is indeed a good idea. Facing the expectant looks in their eyes, Fury spread his hands. If it hadn't been used by those people to study counterattack projects, I think it would be a good idea to use it to escape. Want to leave? Loki was not a walk-on either. After quickly dealing with the minions, he did not stop taking action just because Fury and the others were chatting. Patton. Loki's first target was Patton, the most skilled man in the field. The spear in his hand was pressed against Barton's chest. Loki didn't poke hard like those ordinary agents, but the force in his hand was very gentle, but Barton himself didn't think so. "Ah, what is this? Get out of my body. We are one, come on." Physically, Barton didn't suffer any pain, but in his inner world, another person was torn out of thin air and wanted to take over Barton's body. Loki. "Oh, I still have the power to resist, so let me try harder." After saying that, he increased the energy output of the scepter in his hand. Barton originally challenged his other self in his heart. They were evenly matched at first, but with Loki's operation, his true self finally got lost and lost consciousness. "Don't even think about running away." After controlling Barton, Loki turned around and placed the spear or scepter on the chest of Sylvig, who was originally planning to run away. The process went very smoothly this time, and he was completely controlled as soon as the white film in his eyes rolled up. OMG! Fury fell to the ground and witnessed the whole process. He had already vaguely guessed what his most trusted subordinate and the doctor had gone through. Of course Fury would not choose to sit still and wait for death. When Loki controlled the two of them, he had already picked up the Rubik's Cube and put it into his suitcase. Unconsciously, Fury breathed a sigh of relief, because he knew that if he touched the Rubik's Cube with his hands, he would most likely be teleported away, but he had to do that in an emergency. After putting the Rubik's Cube in place, Fury turned around and left when Loki didn't pay attention to him. He even subconsciously stood on tiptoe to lower the volume. Put the box down, but Loki just pretended not to see it. From the beginning of his appearance, his attention has never left the Rubik's Cube, which was being put into the suitcase by Fury. Loki. "Give it to me, I really need it." Fury. "There's no need to be so nervous, right? Of course it's necessary," Loki answered Fury forcefully. As he spoke, his mind couldn't help but recall everything he had experienced these days. After falling from the Rainbow Bridge, Loki did not wander in the endless universe like the other unlucky ones. On the contrary, he only drifted for a while before arriving at a place where intelligent creatures lived. The lone giants of Jotunheim. As soon as he landed, Loki felt a dangerous look from the shadows. Originally, he wanted to be more cautious, but the other person's words annoyed him. "Loki. I am not that despicable race. I am a god from Asgard, and I am also the king of the divine domain." God. The man from the shadows walked out of the shadows. He was covered with a robe to block his true appearance, but this did not prevent him from taking action against Loki. Boom. Loki. He was knocked away with one punch, and Loki didn't even react. Just this move made him realize that the opponent's strength was definitely far superior to his. The so-called, "a man can bend and stretch." Loki didn't know if he knew this truth. Seeing that he couldn't beat him, he immediately chose to surrender. The other party did not object or humiliate this, but asked, "Tell me about your experience as a frost giant." Loki. "Okay, my lord, here's the thing. Mysterious man. Do you mean that the throne that originally belonged to you was robbed by your brother?" Loki. "Yes, that's a despicable man. Sooner or later I will make him regret everything he has done." Mysterious man. "There is no need to change the date. How about we make a deal now?" In the laboratory, Loki looked at the box in Fury's hand and thought that if he handed over the contents to the mysterious man, it would be equivalent to gaining the throne. This is the content of their deal, simple and straightforward. Loki brings him the Rubik's Cube, and the mysterious man helps him seize the throne. Thinking of the huge and powerful army he saw in the deep sky, that was the strength of the mysterious man. Loki had no doubt that he had the strength to help him realize his wish. Unable to help Loki's eyes filled with eagerness, he looked at Fury, who was still thinking of running away, and said, "This is what I came all this way. I am Loki, from the realm of God. What I shoulder is a great mission that you cannot understand. Fury, we have no enmity or grudge against you. There is no enmity between ants and your shoes, but will you be careful every time you step on the ground for fear of stepping on them?" Loki's words made Fury's already pale face turn even darker. The other person's use of ants as a metaphor clearly meant that he looked down on all human beings. Fury. So you want to trample us to death? He had a pretended anger on his face, as if he had been angered by Loki. Ordinary people would really believe it, and they might keep chatting with Fury to gain the pleasure that only winners can enjoy. Loki, what I actually bring is good news, a world without worries. Looking at the chaotic high-density energy reactor above his head from the corner of his eye, Fury decided to delay. What are you worried about? Loki, freedom. Freedom is the biggest lie in life. If you accept this, you will have peace in your heart. Loki was obviously deceived by Fury's superb acting skills. Now that he is very talkative, he feels as if he can't wait to enjoy the joy of victory right here. Fury, what you call peace reminds me of its antonym. Loki wanted to answer, but Barton on the side interrupted. Head, Fury is stalling for time. If my guess is correct, the thing above is about to explode. After all, Barton was also an agent, and he was an extremely good one. Naturally, Fury's thoughts couldn't be hidden from him. Loki, oh, really? Then let him play alone here slowly. After saying that, he left without giving Fury any more nonsense. The reason why he didn't take action himself was because he completely believed in Barton or the scepter in his hand. But it's a pity that Loki overestimated himself after all. His use of the scepter ability was so crude that it was not even considered elementary. This caused Barton's hand, which was originally aimed at Fury's head, to miss. Bang! There was a gunshot, and Fury fell down. Barton was also in a semi-confused state at this time, which led him to leave without taking a look. Tony, you are already dead in the video, right? Could it be? Fury, stop being weird, Tony. Haven't you realized the seriousness of the problem? Others have already arrived at our doorstep. The smile on Tony's face at this moment faded as Fury's expression became more serious. He was wearing a steel suit, hugging his arms and saying, "They're knocking on the door. Then let them know who the ants are." Fury, that's decent, but it's not enough for you to fight alone. I think you need the strength of a team. Tony, have you forgotten the person next to me? I think he only needs to fight alone. If I have to participate in the photo shoot, I think I will participate. Robert stood aside and looked at the two people indifferently. His eyes were even a little distracted. That was because his attention was not here at all. He had been like this ever since Loki appeared with the scepter. Fury, Lieutenant General Robert. Lieutenant General Robert. Robert. Well, what? After being shouted twice, he came back to his senses and turned to look at Fury. Robert asked with confusion on his face. I want to ask, are you sure you can deal with the person in the video? Fury frowned, feeling as if he was the only one here who really cared about the safety of the world. Robert, no problem, as long as you find him, I can subdue him in just a few seconds. Robert has seen Loki's strength in the video. In fact, a few seconds are all about his humility and high opinion of Loki. Fury, finally heard some good news so far. But Mr. Lieutenant General, you should not take action as a strategic deterrent. I want to train the new team. Regarding this, Robert nodded indifferently. He really didn't care how he acted, as long as he could touch the scepter of the roadbed from behind. If I remember correctly, it should be the Soul Stone, which is really exciting. Judging from his own memory and the video provided by Fury, there is a high probability that the scepter used by Loki is the Mind Stone, so Robert seemed to have seen a new ability waving to him. Robert was fine with Fury's arrangement, but Tony next to them was not. Why waste time letting the new team solve the problem? Robert can solve it alone. Facing Tony's doubts, Fury shot him back with just one sentence. Can Lieutenant General Robert help us at any time? If he has more important things to deal with later and cannot help us, shouldn't we stop taking action and just wait for Robert? Tony, it seems to make some sense. Robert looked at Tony, who was persuaded by Fury and felt a little weird. Shouldn't the normal script be that the two quarrel with each other and then gain and lose from each other? This braised egg is not easy to deal with. He has many dirty tricks. It's not that I can't defeat him, but I just don't want to say that I'm afraid of being remembered by this old boy. Tony saw Robert's doubts, so he went to his ear to explain. Perhaps this explains why Robert likes to hear that Fury is often called a braised egg, because he may have suffered a loss at his hands and want to use words to retaliate behind his back. Fury, is there something shameful you are whispering about there? Looking at Tony, who was talking in Robert's ear, Fury always felt itchy in his nose, as if he might sneeze at any time. Nothing. Tell me something useful. When will our summer camp team arrive? Let me declare in advance that I will not take care of those people if they suck. Not only did Tony not feel embarrassed for laughing at Fury behind his back, but he also showed his arrogance without hesitation in front of him. Fury, you should restrain yourself appropriately. I can tell you right now that there are big guys in your so-called summer camp who are very difficult to deal with. Tony, big guy. Fury did not end his doubts, but started to pick up his mobile phone and make a summons call. Doo-doo. The first call was not answered until more than 10 seconds later. Hey, why are you calling me at this time? I'm on a mission, and all the old fools on the other side have been recruited. Natasha Romanoff said while holding the phone under her shoulder, which confused the Russian interrogating him. If I remember correctly, we are interrogating you, right? The Russian leader couldn't help but ask, but was ignored. Fury, stop playing around now. I have more important things here. Is it okay to deal with your current situation in 2 minutes? Natasha Romanoff looked at the two strong men in front of her, plus an old man, and she estimated her time. It won't take so long, I might not even need it for a minute. That's enough. What are you telling that man? Natasha Romanoff's indifferent behavior and her unclear words made the Russian leader a little uneasy, and he couldn't help but signal to his two men. If you don't tell the truth, I will let them leave you. Pong, ah. Before he finished speaking, Natasha Romanoff had already dispatched 2 of his men at such a speed that it was difficult for this man to adapt to the change. Natasha Romanoff, now can you tell me what you just said? Ah, can you let me go? Beat, don't. Natasha Romanoff's response was very direct. Not only did she not retaliate against him for his previous actions, but she even kindly asked him to play on the swing. It's just that the way of swinging on this swing is a little different. It uses a chain to tie the ankles, and there is a hard concrete floor more than 10 meters below. Fury, that's great. You completed the task in 1.5 minutes, half a minute ahead of the time I set. Fury knew the matter was taken care of when he heard the screams of joy from someone on the swing coming from the other end of the phone. Natasha Romanoff, next time if I don't do something good I should be able to do it faster. Now tell me, what's wrong? She leaned over to pick up the high heels and asked Fury as she walked out. Barton is controlled by the enemy. The enemy is very strong and we have to use some special methods. Natasha Romanoff, where are you? I'll be right there. No, it won't help if you come here now, so you'd better be responsible for finding that big guy. When Fury heard that Natasha Romanoff was coming, she immediately refused and asked Coles on the side to send her an address. Fury, stay safe Natasha Romanoff agent. Yes, I will. Tony, are you talking about Natasha Romanoff just now? She hasn't come to work in my company recently. If so, I will definitely deduct her salary at the end of the month. There was an uncontrollable smile on his face when he said this. The reason for this was because Natasha Romanoff had made such a deep impression on Tony. Not to mention the time when she pretended to be an ordinary person and sneaked into Stark's company to work as his assistant, but that time she gave Tony an injection was something that someone would never forget. Fury, oh, I think you have to try to reduce this conflict. The expression on Tony's face was stunned. Suddenly he thought of a possibility and looked at Fury with incredible eyes. Don't look at me like that. Natasha Romanoff agent has the ability to join the Avengers. Haven't you seen how powerful she is? Tony, if you mean injections, I've definitely seen it. Obviously his resentment for this will not be dispelled by Fury's words. Fury, be more open-minded Tony. I don't want to. Let me see how open-minded you can be when you are pricked like an animal with needles. Fury, seeing the possibility of a quarrel between the two, Robert did not want to join in, let alone waste time watching the excitement. You guys make a noise first, and I'll leave first. A space door appeared behind him, and Robert was about to turn around and leave, but was stopped by Fury. Fury, hey, wait Robert, I have one more thing to trouble you with. A slum area in a certain country. How did you come? Natasha Romanoff glanced at Robert with questioning eyes, as if he shouldn't be here. Stop looking at me with that look in your eyes. Your superior said a lot of good things before you invited me here. If I get angry because of you, do you think Fury will be angry? Robert looked at Natasha Romanoff with a smile, which made people feel unspeakably mean. Natasha Romanoff wanted to refute immediately after hearing Robert's words. She could solve the problem by herself, but when she thought about the people she would face next, she also felt scared. Snort. So all the dissatisfaction in her heart turned into a soft hum, and she turned her head away, as if she didn't want to see Robert. Stop your dog-raising tactics, I won't accept your tactics. Natasha Romanoff was sitting there with a hint of white on her body. Coupled with her arrogant look, she would really be fascinated by her, but Robert obviously knew the details of the other party. Natasha Romanoff. You are so uninteresting, it makes me wonder if you are incompetent. Pulling up her clothes, Natasha Romanoff said sarcastically, maybe it was because her tried and tested tricks failed and she was in a bad mood. Robert ignored her. The danger level of this woman was simply terrifying. For reference, please see Hulk. As we all know, Hulk is extremely aggressive when Banner, who has not controlled his temper, transforms into Hulk. The specific situation is that they smash everything they see, hit everyone they see, and even tanks can be picked up and thrown away as toys. With such terrifying fighting power, Natasha Romanoff was stunned. Hulk actually chose to give up the attack after seeing her. At one point, Natasha Romanoff was able to wake up Dr. Banner through her own voice. What is this? It's great to train a licking dog properly. Robert sneered at this semi-controlled state, which was why he did not choose to talk to Natasha Romanoff, who was well versed in psychology, to avoid being led into trouble by the other party. Seriously, why did Fury ask you to come here? Stand there like a wooden stake. Natasha Romanoff and Robert were currently in a dilapidated small house. Why was it said to be dilapidated? Because there was not even a piece of intact furniture, and even the windows were randomly covered with cloth. Robert. Say it. Why didn't you say it? He raised his eyebrows, and Robert, who originally planned to give her some color if she continued to provoke her, was a little dissatisfied with Natasha Romanoff's sudden stop. Because the rightful owner has arrived. Natasha Romanoff looked out the door and listened to the approaching footsteps and said. Immediately afterwards, Robert saw a little girl come in and quickly get out of the window, staying in the room for less than 10 seconds. Banner was a little confused at first when he looked at the girl going out of the window, but when he turned around and saw Natasha Romanoff, he immediately knew what had happened. I should collect money from her first. Natasha Romanoff. For someone who needs to escape stress, you've found a good place. Banner. Escape is not a panacea. Then what is yoga? Robert. Honestly, does that stuff really work? Walking out of the hidden place, in fact, he never thought about hiding himself. Banner. Oh, I recognize you. You cut off one of Abomination's hands. Does that mean you are here to kill me? His lines have changed. Robert remembers that in the original work, Dr. Banner arrogantly stated that no one could kill him. We come to you on behalf of S.H.I.E.L.D. Natasha Romanoff took a step forward and happened to stand in front of Robert. It was obvious that she had the purpose of attracting Banner's attention back to herself in order to better control the situation. Banner. S.H.I.E.L.D. How did S.H.I.E.L.D. find me? Natasha Romanoff. We have been paying attention to you, Doctor, but we have deliberately kept a certain distance and even blocked some people who are interested in you. Of course she said this to gain the other person's favor. It can be seen from Banner's attitude that Natasha Romanoff's overture was very successful. Banner. I choose to believe you. Thank you for helping me conceal my whereabouts, but why do you suddenly come to my door now? The tense expression on his face relaxed. It was obvious that Banner was very satisfied that he had not been disturbed during these times, but this did not mean that he did not want to continue this undisturbed life. Natasha Romanoff. Nick. Fury trusts you very much. He thinks you can control your own power, so he wants me to take you to S.H.I.E.L.D. this time. Banner. What are you going to do? Put me in an iron cage to do research, then I have no interest in it. After saying that, he turned around and wanted to leave. Upon seeing this, Natasha Romanoff quickly said behind him. The world is facing an unprecedented crisis, and we need your help to resolve it. Why me? I feel that the person beside you is enough to solve all problems. He may even be stronger than me. It's not possible, he is really better than you. Natasha Romanoff thought to herself, but she couldn't just watch Banner leave, so she blocked him. Whether you believe it or not, the world is really facing a crisis. I think you should contribute to world peace with such strong ability. Banner, you just want to put me in a cage again, don't think about lying to me anymore, roar. Crack. Faced with Banner's roar, Natasha Romanoff decisively drew her gun. In fact, she had been prepared, and the gun's safety was always on. Banner, see, you've always been wary of me. Facing the pistol pointed at his face, he didn't believe this was a friendly invitation even more. None of you can stop me. Banner insisted on leaving, perhaps because Robert was here and made him feel insecure. It seems the negotiation failed. Robert stood up from the side with his arms crossed, blocking Dr. Banner's way. Oh, don't be like this, okay. I just want to have my own life, don't I just want to be locked in a cage? Facing Robert's obstruction, Banner was a little pessimistic at first, but gradually his expression became angry. Get out of the way, I don't want to hurt anyone. Roar. At this time, veins popped up on Banner's face, and a faint green appeared on his entire face. Seeing this scene, even Natasha Romanoff consciously retreated, leaving only Robert and Banner. It's impossible to get out of the way. Do you know that your thoughts are the same as mine? I don't want to hurt you. Facing a scene that ordinary people would consider extremely dangerous, Robert still kept smiling. He was not unprepared. This could be seen from the light blue light that began to cover his body. You forced me to do this. Ah. With a loud roar, a huge monster began to appear in front of Robert. Banner, or now Hulk, was very unhappy with what he could say. Get out of here. A green iron fist struck with extremely powerful force, and at the same time Hulk spoke angrily. Hey. Robert did not choose to use his body to resist this time, but chose a very safe tactic. You, this, timid, coward, have the guts to fight. After a few minutes, Hulk learned to communicate using language, but judging from the meaning he expressed, it did not seem to be an expression of goodwill. What did you say? As he spoke, he waved his hand, and Hulk's falling speed became even faster. What's the situation at the scene? To put it simply, Robert used the power of space to create two portals for Hulk, one up and one down. Hulk seemed to be in an endless loop, falling from the lower door and emerging from the upper door again, and the cycle started again. In order to prevent Hulk from escaping this wonderful game, Robert also specially added air walls around the two doors, which is quite considerate. Are you sure he won't die? Natasha Romanoff, who had already gone out, returned. If anyone walked outside at this time, they would find that a large area in a surrounding area was blocked and people were evacuated urgently. After making so many preparations, Natasha Romanoff suddenly felt that all of them were a bit redundant after seeing the scene in front of her. Don't worry, this level of restraint can't harm it at all. Natasha Romanoff looked at Hulk, who kept going back and forth between the two doors. He was now so fast that he could only see the afterimage. Is that okay? Hulk's physical body is quite strong. My purpose of doing this is just to restrain him. Think about the situation when an angry lion becomes the most angry. Natasha Romanoff. When you have all the energy but can't make it happen. That's a good guess, but I have to add that it's when you see the source of anger, but you can only look at it. As he spoke, he slowed down Hulk's fall, but not enough to give him the ability to move. Ho, ho, ho. Hulk had no other choice but to scream wildly, because even if he sees the opportunity to escape from the two doors, he would always be blocked by an invisible wall. After 1 hour, to be honest, I thought your temper would last a long time. Looking at Dr. Banner, who had returned to normal shape and only had a pair of underwear left, Robert leaned over and said, How did you do it? Standing up from the ground, Banner looked at the house that was still well preserved and felt incredible that the appearance had not changed even before he lost consciousness. Oh, in fact, his memories with Hulk are not shared. Banner was actually completely unconscious when he transformed into Hulk. Only after the transformation was over, he could get some memory fragments after the coma. The process of inheriting memories is a bit painful, but Banner is used to it, but unlike the large-scale destruction in the past, Hulk's memories are a little different this time. It's incredible. After Banner shared his memories, he clearly felt Hulk's sense of suffocation, powerlessness, and even fear behind him. It is impossible for Hulk to have these feelings in the past, because nothing could stop him at that time, but now he has it, and he is still a being who can control him at will. Banner. Okay, I agree to go with you. I hope it's true as you said, and there won't be any big cages or anything like that. Banner didn't think Hulk could solve the situation with his thin arms and legs, so the only option at the moment seemed to be to go with Robert and the others. Natasha Romanoff. I promise again, we will not restrict your freedom. After looking at Robert Banner, he sighed, hey, I hope so. Early the next morning, Robert took a transport plane to an aircraft carrier at sea. The moving aircraft carrier does not have fixed coordinates, so Robert chose to use an inefficient means of transportation such as airplanes. Put away the captain's equipment. Robert and Banner were walking on the deck of the aircraft carrier, following Natasha Romanoff, when Coulson's voice came from around them. Robert. Robert was seen first before he even noticed, and then Steve came to him. I didn't expect you to come too. It seems we have another chance to fight side by side. Steve couldn't help but give Robert a hug, and said with a little excitement when he let go. Well, I'm actually quite happy. Robert and Captain America chatted for a while, but they didn't ignore that there were other people beside them. Robert. This is Dr. Banner's famous expert in gamma-ray research. This is Steve, Doctor, you can also call him Captain America. Introducing the two to each other, Robert acted like a bridge builder. Banner. They said you were coming, Captain, so excited to see you. As he spoke, he stretched out a hand politely. Captain America, who never had any airs, shook his hand kindly and complimented him in the same way. Captain America. I heard that your research on gamma rays can help us find the Rubik's Cube. It seems that you will be very busy next. On the plane, Natasha Romanoff also introduced the purpose of the trip and the background of the matter to Banner. Because of the support of this basic information, Banner would not be ignorant of everything. I will do my best, but everything still depends on God's will. The conversation between Banner and Captain America was temporarily over. At this time, Natasha Romanoff also intervened at the right time. Gentlemen, I suggest you go inside to talk. No one will be allowed to stand here in a while. Wang, Wang. As soon as she finished speaking, the aircraft carrier's hull made a sound of huge amounts, and it felt like a giant was reviving. Banner. Can't stand people. Could it turn into a submarine and go into the sea? In the next few minutes, it turned out that his thinking was still too conservative. Even entering the water could no longer satisfy the people of S.H.I.E.L.D. They turned to seek the true meaning of aircraft carrier, aviation. Captain America. This thing can actually go to heaven. He looked down in surprise and found that the aircraft carrier had really taken off. His expression was as surprised as if he had never seen the world before, just like someone. Well, although Robert knew that S.H.I.E.L.D.'s aircraft carrier could fly, he still couldn't help but let out a sound of admiration when he saw it with his own eyes. However, just as they were admiring the beautiful scenery and the achievements of human science and technology, in another distant place, in a shameful experiment, Loki was inspecting the work. Sylvig. Hey, where did you find such a big group of people? Barton. S.H.I.E.L.D. makes a lot of enemies for doctors. Is this what you want? Metal iridium. Patton held the screen of the military computer toward Sylviger so that he could identify it. After looking carefully, Sylvig immediately said that this was the thing. At this time, he happened to see Loki walking over. You know what? The Rubik's Cube really opened my eyes. It's not just knowledge, it's truth. He has been completely brainwashed by the Mind Stone, so he is absolutely loyal to Loki, and flattering him is also a sign of his goodwill. Loki. Of course it's the truth, I know it. What did it make you see Barton? Suddenly Loki's words changed and he started asking about Barton. My next goal. Barton is indeed a person who is as controlled as Sylwig. When it comes to work, he can't wait to rush to work. Loki. What do you need? How can the boss not like such a loyal and hardworking employee? Patton. I need a bait, and eyeliner. Loki. Then it seems I have to appear in person. So 2 hours later, S.H.I.E.L.D. discovered Loki's whereabouts through the surveillance network monitoring most of the world. Found him. The similarity is 30%. No wait, it's 79%. The agent responsible for monitoring immediately shouted, successfully attracting the attention of Fury and others. Captain America. Looks like we've taken action. Robert. I think so. Can the boy over there provide me with the coordinates of where the other party appears? Agent. Oh, okay. Etc. Fury suddenly came out to interrupt, and he came to Robert and the captain. Lieutenant General Robert, it's better for you to observe the battle instead of participating. Why? Before Fury finished speaking, Captain America couldn't help but raise questions. Faced with this, Fury naturally had his own explanation. Because I think this will be an opportunity for the members of the Avengers team to get to know each other, both in terms of personality and combat methods. And Captain, are you sure you still have a chance to perform if Robert takes action? Fury's words made Captain America think for a while. The scene when Robert took action flashed through his mind. After thinking about it carefully, Captain America was right. Sorry, brother. Captain America accepted Fury's proposal, but he always felt that he was sorry for Robert. Ah, Captain, I'm not a fighting fanatic, so there's no need to be like this. Robert didn't say a word. He was afraid that saying it would affect the friendship, so he could only think in his heart. Does something like that can be solved with one hand be considered a battle? He had no intention of hiding his location in Germany. When the exact location was reported, a space door appeared instantly behind Robert. Captain America originally wanted to follow Robert and go there ahead of time, but Fury interrupted at this time and said, "Let Lieutenant General Robert go there first. Captain, you and Natasha Romanoff will act together first." Okay, then I'll leave first. Robert nodded to the captain and directly opened a space door, and went to Stuttgart, Germany, where a dinner was being held at this time. Buzz. A supercar drove past him. Robert looked outside and found that it was hard to find even a car worth less than 1 million. These people are really rich. With a sigh, Robert's body began to fade away. He was not prepared to scare Loki away before the captain and the others arrived. Of course, he actually has another option, which is to directly subdue Loki, but in that case, how can the captain and the others play? Excuse me, sir, could you please take a look at your invitation? Robert has the power of space that allows him to achieve physical invisibility, but Loki does not have this, so the security guard at the banquet door immediately noticed his unfamiliar face. Loki. Oh, invitation. Yes, then I'll give it to you. Suddenly one of his hands reached out, and there was actually where Loki had hidden his scepter. Bang! An energy from the Mind Stone burst out, and the white membrane in the eyes of the security guard in front of Loki rolled up before he could react. When he opened his eyes again, he was no longer the original him. Loki. I guess I can get in now, right? Security. Of course, no problem, my master. Oh, very good. Loki began to smile again, and after adjusting his clothes, he walked towards the hall. Robert witnessed all this with his eyes behind Loki. To be honest, if he hadn't wanted to give the captain and the others some room to play, he would have subdued Loki long ago. The dinner was still half an hour away from the start time, during which time Loki casually found a place to sit down. After asking the waiter for a glass of wine, he stopped moving, as if he was waiting for something. Robert still has some patience. Loki has time to wait, and he is not in a hurry, especially when the banquet is surrounded by various snacks and drinks. James, have you noticed? There seems to be an inexplicable lack of things there. The middle-aged man named James looked at where the woman was pointing and saw that there was no one there, and things would not run away on their own. James, my little sweetie, maybe it's because you didn't sleep well last night. I promise I will be gentler tonight or even let you go. You are so bad. The young girl threw herself into the man's arms and acted coquettishly. In her heart, she actually hated the smell of cigarette smoke and the faint rancid smell on the man's body, but she still pretended to like him on her face. James, if you continue like this, I will have to break the promise I just made. With your quick movements, if men in the world were to rank the fastest, you would definitely be at the top. The girl mocked the other person in her heart, showing a disgusting look where he couldn't see, but she still tried hard to cater to James on the surface. Suck. Robert finished a plate of spaghetti. I don't know if it was because the dinner was of high standard or because he was hungry, but today's bowl of spaghetti seemed particularly delicious. Tisk tisk. He threw the plate of pasta to the side. Just when it was about to touch the ground, a ball of blue energy enveloped it first, and the plate began its journey to another world. These two are really interesting, haha. Robert watched the excitement while eating. According to his guess, the man named James was not good. Otherwise, how could the girl show such an expression? Ladies and gentlemen, how about we dance before the banquet starts? But the prerequisite is that you have your own dance partner. Robert was eating melon, looking at the girl who always showed disgust in places where no one could see her. He once wondered if he could save her. However, his fantasy has not yet been carried out. As the initiator of this dinner, he is a senior government official and a part-time consultant for a Fortune 500 company. The sponsor stood up and invited everyone to dance, and naturally almost everyone accepted it happily, except for the small group of people who had no dance partners. Sir, do you need a dance partner? Loki. No, I don't need, thank you. Really, I think you can consider me. Loki. It's really not necessary. Robert watched from a short distance away. Several lonely women at the dinner party had already approached Loki and wanted to be his dance partner. Looking at it from this angle, Loki is actually quite handsome. If those eyes are changed, they should be a bit sharper. Looking at Loki not far away, who had rejected one wave of female invitations after another, Robert felt that the other party's appearance was quite good. Excuse me. As soon as Loki rejected the previous wave of people, another group of people immediately gathered around him. But who gave him a good image? All the girls around him coveted him. Oh, that's enough, can't you guys just take a break? Loki really couldn't stand the feeling of being surrounded by women. He was a man who aspired to be the king of Asgard, and the love between his children was not at all on his mind. Hey, the young man is still too young. Looking at Loki who went upstairs to hide, Robert sighed. The independent space condensed by the power of space allows Robert to do almost anything he wants inside. Not only can people outside not see it, but they can't even hear it. Dang, fang. Melodious and soothing music sounded in the hall. Loki raised his hand from time to time to check the time. His blatant appearance this time was not just to attract shield and act as bait. 10 minutes later. Phew, it's mission time. With a tilt of his head, Loki finally waited until the time agreed upon with Barton, and his performance was about to begin. Downstairs, the opening of my dance party had also ended at this time. According to the original plan, the next step would be conversation time between celebrities and political and business leaders, but at this time, an uninvited guest suddenly came down from upstairs. Stop now, who are you? The security guard at the scene noticed Loki breaking in immediately, and he stepped out to block Loki. Bang! Ah! Run quickly! An unexpected gunshot caught everyone at the scene off guard, and no one knew who in the crowd shouted first. Everyone immediately dispersed in fright. Master, I did a good job, didn't I? Loki wiped the blood on his face. It was probably mixed with serum, which made him extremely sick. Go to hell. Bang. His scepter immediately appeared in his hand, and the energy light on it reached its peak instantly. Loki hit the security guard who had just fired. The scepter in his hand is actually the bearer of the Mind Stone, so even if Loki is not proficient enough in using it and cannot fully exert its power, it is easy to kill a carbon-based creature. Forehead. With a low groan, the security guard previously controlled by Loki slowly fell down. Until his death, he might not be able to imagine why he was killed by his master. How low is this emotional intelligence? Robert covered his face. Just when he was struggling to save this man's life, the security guard had been killed neatly by Loki. Ah, forget it, let's do business first. Loki wiped the blood on his body with extreme disgust. Now he hated the security guard who had just fired. If he hadn't been in a hurry, Loki might have chosen even more cruel methods. No, 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 I don't remember when I provoked you. Ah. The official hosting the dinner saw Loki constantly approaching him. The security guards around him had already been frightened and most of them had run away. Only he and the chaotic guests were left here. You don't mean what you said. Loki took out a machine from his pocket and put it on the official's face. In an instant, a small device appeared and dug out the official's eyes. Ah, 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 oh, my God, hell God, who will save us? Squeak, the door is open, the jammed door is open. Loki smiled while doing the cruelest thing. When he confirmed that the job was completed, he turned to look at the fleeing people, and his smile became even stronger. As he walked out the door, he transformed into his true appearance, even the scepter. Loki returned to the makeup he had in God's realm. Ah, he's out. Run. Kneel down. The crowd was quite chaotic. In order to calm them down, Loki had to use some magic. In the open space where the crowd gathered, Loki's duplication appeared continuously in multiple directions, and the panicked people were herded together by Loki like sheep. I say it again, kneel down. Wang. The light on the scepter flashed, and the crowd immediately fell silent. Fear of Loki was one of the reasons, but the role played by the Mind Stone cannot be ignored either. Immediately afterwards, everyone began to kneel down involuntarily, even Robert, who was watching the show. As the light on Loki's scepter flashed, his knees began to weaken. Interesting. A ball of blue energy quickly covered his body, and the feeling of wanting to surrender disappeared from his heart instantly. Robert would not think that this is the effect that Loki's strength can achieve, and the Mind Stone is the key. Ha ha ha, isn't this simple? Looking at the large crowd of people kneeling down, Loki laughed with great satisfaction, because he enjoyed the feeling of being worshipped. Look at the way you are kneeling. Isn't that what you were born to do? Slowly walking into the kneeling crowd, Loki was like a speaker. His words were bewitching and people couldn't help but believe what he said. This is the unspoken truth of mankind. The temptation of freedom has deprived you of the happiness in life. You long to be enslaved. You crazily pursue power and status. In fact, you are full of servility in your bones. Loki's words undoubtedly humiliated the people in front of him. Most of the people kneeling here were Germans. If the time could be pushed back a few decades, if a failed art student who loves to give lectures could see the appearance of young Germans today, who not only dare not resist or even dare to raise their heads when faced with humiliation, I don't know what would happen. People will be disappointed after watching it. The light on Loki's scepter disappeared, which meant that he no longer used the power of the Mind Stone, but no one at the scene stood up, which made Loki smug and thought it was his power that scared them. Look, you are always full of servility and will succumb to your ruler sooner or later. Ceng. The sound of cloth rubbing against the ground was heard, and Loki's eyes were immediately attracted. He looked up and found that it was an old man standing up. Whether we are servile or not is up for debate, but even if we are, we will not succumb to people like you, because you are not worthy at all. After the old man stood still, he slowly and firmly finished speaking those words. His voice was not loud but could be heard by the whole audience. Loki, I am unique. I advise you to carefully consider what you are going to say next, because it may be related to your life. Old man, there are so many shameless people like you. Why don't you beat me to death if you can? Ha. Ha. Loki laughed angrily at the old man in front of him. He slowly raised his scepter and wanted to use it to establish his power. Be optimistic about what will happen to this old man next. I hope you will take a warning from him. Bang. Wave. Forehead. Loki had just fired out the energy, trying to kill the old man who resisted him, but the energy bounced back from a shield and knocked him to the ground. I remember the last time I came to Germany, there was a man who put himself above everyone else, but he didn't get a good ending. Loki got up from the ground, and when he saw the person who had made him look miserable, he couldn't help but mocked. I thought who was coming, but it turned out to be a soldier. Ha ha, an outdated person. Captain America. I am not the one who is outdated. After saying that, he threw the shield directly. The so-called non-speculation is more than enough. This is the state of Captain America and Loki. You are no match for me, soldier. Captain America. Really, you won't know until after the fight. Just when the US team was about to prepare for a close attack, Natasha Romanoff was already ready, and the fighter jet she piloted was hovering over the two of them. Drop your weapons, Loki. A Gatling cannon appeared on the bottom of the fighter plane, Natasha Romanoff shouted through the loudspeaker. Bang. However, what he received was Loki's decisive counterattack. Natasha Romanoff narrowly escaped, and the captain below saw this and started to take care of Loki. Hey, ha. The two fought hand to hand, but from the perspective of passers-by, the US team was still at a disadvantage. However, this may be because there were too many people panicking and running around, causing the US team to restrain its strength in order not to hurt them. Although Natasha Romanoff showed her weapon, it was mainly used as a deterrent. Not to mention that the captain was still fighting Loki below, the scattered crowd alone prevented her from firing. Miss me Natasha Romanoff agent. Suddenly, the console in the plane was invaded by an unknown virus, and then Tony's voice appeared in the cabin. Ah, Natasha Romanoff's expression changed from confusion to laughter, because Tony's arrival made the question seem easier. Boom. Wearing a steel suit, Tony hit Loki hard, and then started the propulsion equipment to push him further. Mr. Stark. Captain America knew about Tony's existence. That was the information provided to him by Fury, but when he greeted Tony, he always felt strange in his heart. Hello, Captain. Tony didn't feel that strange feeling. After greeting Captain America naturally, he turned his attention to Loki. Getting up from the ground, Loki looked injured, but Tony and Captain America did not dare to take it lightly. Tony, move again, believe me it won't do you any good. The weapon bays on the steel armor were all opened and aimed at Loki. Only a small missile of those micro-missiles was enough to destroy a house, and Loki was being locked by more than a dozen. Calm down, okay, I just surrender. The divine clothes on his body were taken off, and Loki slowly raised his hand. I don't know if he went to France recently, otherwise how could he be so skillful in his movements? Tony. Great. He stepped forward and handcuffed Loki, and the other party was very cooperative. It felt as if he didn't care at all about being caught. Robert. Seeing the dust settle, Captain America shouted. Robert, is he coming? Tony, who had already handcuffed Loki, asked the captain confused. The reason why he was confused was because if Robert was here, the problem should have been solved long ago. Well, I'm here, but that guy Fury asked you to practice your tacit understanding, so I haven't taken any action. Tony. He always has some weird requests. Captain America. I totally agree with you. Tony. Really? Fury's bald head may be caused by doing too many immoral things all day long. Robert. Is there any scientific basis for this? The reason why he asked this was because he felt that what he was doing seemed to, probably, he wouldn't lose his hair because of it, right? Okay, let's go back and deliver the errand quickly. Someone will handle it later. Natasha Romanoff saw that several people were chatting until dawn and quickly interrupted, and took the initiative to escort Loki to the plane. Let's chat on the plane. So Robert put his arm around Tony's shoulders, and put his arm around Captain America, and the three of them got on the plane arm in arm. Can you really keep an eye on the prisoner like this? As Natasha Romanoff started the plane, she looked at the three people holding each other's back. No matter how you looked at it, it looked a little unreliable. Robert. No problem, he can't fly out even if he is a fly today. A blue energy suddenly covered Loki. Loki, who originally had the ability to move and was confident that he could walk if he wanted to, suddenly lost his ability to move and confidence. It's him. When Robert came out at first, Loki felt familiar. Now when he was restricted by the blue energy, he suddenly remembered. Isn't this the strong man who beat the Destroyer into tatters last time? Loki's heart twitched hard. He was afraid of this, and the confident smile on his face that was visible to the naked eye disappeared, and he became a little depressed. Tony, are you telling the truth? Will you really lose your hair if you do too many immoral things? Tony, why do you suddenly care about this? Robert, well, I have a friend. Oh, then I will analyze it for your friend. Immediately afterwards, Robert and the captain heard Tony speak a lot of nouns that they did not understand. Maybe you could put it more simply. Captain America. I also think, Tony, what you said is too complicated. The two people's words made Tony's face flash with a hint of pride. This may be the satisfaction gained from others not understanding, but he understands, or maybe there are other things. Tony. Okay, let me put it simply, that is, emotions can also affect a person's hair growth. When you feel guilty, your emotions must be tense. Call. After hearing what Tony said, Robert let out a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he felt at ease and didn't feel guilty. Boom. Natasha Romanoff. Strange, how could you suddenly enter a thundercloud when you were fine just now? Crack. A pale thunderbolt fell from the side of the plane. Natasha Romanoff was concentrating on avoiding being hit by lightning, while Robert looked at the thunder outside with interest. Captain America. This is not a good sign. Boom. Before Captain America finished speaking, the plane shook as if it had been hit by something. Just when everyone thought they were struck by lightning, a man's voice came from outside. Open the door, or I will smash your mount. Tony, get ready for battle. Natasha Romanoff, please open the door. That guy might actually go crazy and shoot down our plane. He put his helmet on and said to Natasha Romanoff. Good. Hoo. For an airplane flying in the sky, when the cabin door is opened, the wind will inevitably flow in. With the roar of the wind, a figure will appear in front of everyone. Buzz. As soon as Tony accumulated his strength, he wanted to restrain the incoming opponent, but unfortunately, he was a second faster than him, and he just saw that he swung a hammer and Tony was instantly knocked away. After Thor entered the plane, his attention was all on Loki, so he didn't notice Robert sitting inside. Come with me. Thor swung his hammer and left with logic. Who is he? Another divine realm person? Natasha Romanoff asked Tony from the front. None of this is important anymore. The more important question now is, Robert, why didn't you take action just now? Tony got up from the floor of the fighter plane and asked while brushing away the dust that was not there at all. Captain America. Tony can't blame Robert, he might not have reacted just now. Captain America wanted to defend Robert, but Robert himself admitted after patting him on the shoulder. I have the ability to stop it, but remember, Fury said I would try not to participate. Tony, there's no need to listen to him, right? If I remember correctly, this is an action related to the survival of the world. To be honest, if the person in front of him was not Robert, but another person who had the ability but did not stop Tony, he might have punched him in the face. Okay, everything is under control. A mirror formed by the power of space appeared in front of everyone, and the figures of Tony and Loki were clearly displayed on it. Like this, Robert pointed toward the inside of the mirror of space, and saw that Tony, who was still moving at high speed, was instantly wrapped in blue energy and could no longer move. Look, I was right, everything is under control. After the demonstration, Robert took back the power of space, allowing Thor and the others to gain mobility again. Tony. Oh, very good. I thought I had to take you to a mental hospital for a visit, but I didn't expect that the person who really should go see you was not you. What should we do next? Natasha Romanoff automatically filtered Tony's words. She was now concerned about how to get Loki back if Robert couldn't take action. Cap, we should probably make a battle plan. Tony, you're right, Captain, I think the battle plan should be the battle. Boom. After Tony finished speaking, he flew out directly. Robert remained unmoved, and Captain America was helpless in the face of this situation. I can't control his captain. Natasha Romanoff was also a little dissatisfied with Tony's actions in the past, but there was nothing she could do about it. Captain America. Whatever, I think I can only rely on myself at this time. I go first. Picking up an umbrella bag from the seat, Captain America said hello to Robert and then parachuted directly down. Well, if you need anything, just call me by my name. I don't know if Captain America heard it clearly, but Robert said it anyway, and he began to pay attention to the picture on his space mirror. Thor. That person is here too. He had experienced that feeling of being so controlled that he was unable to fight back, and it was hard to forget. Loki. Didn't you see? He was on the plane. To be honest, I really don't know how you got me out from under his nose. Do you have a good relationship with him? Bang. Thor did not answer his words, but threw him down on the edge of a cliff. Where's the Tesseract? You'd better hand it over quickly. Loki. Since the destruction of the Rainbow Bridge, Odin must have put in a lot of effort to bring you back to the Earth you dreamed of, right? Facing Thor's inquiry, Loki not only did not answer, but also mocked him with great interest. You'd better hurry up. I don't have any friendship with that person. If he comes later, I don't have the ability to protect you. Thor pulled up Loki's clothes on the ground and warned him seriously. Relax, Thor, if he really doesn't want me to leave, you don't have the ability to take me out at all. Although I don't know what the purpose is, one thing I can be sure of is that that person will not come in person. Pushing Thor aside, Loki stood up from the ground, patting his clothes as he spoke. Although Robert won't come, it doesn't mean that I won't come. Thor originally wanted to ask again, but Tony suddenly appeared and interrupted him. At the same time, Tony hit him at a very fast speed and knocked Thor off the cliff. Shish. Not only did Loki show no anger at all when he saw his brother being beaten away, but he actually looked like he was watching the fun and whistled in his mouth. Aha! Thor was knocked to the ground hard, and Tony, the initiator of all this, stepped on him and jumped away immediately. Mortal, do you know the price you will pay for your actions just now? Thor casually wiped the dirt on his face. Although his movements were casual, it didn't mean that he didn't mind in his heart. The real situation was just the opposite. Tony, oh, really? But I think if you hadn't taken away the criminal I captured without saying a word, I might have greeted you in a gentler way. Thor, watch your wording. Loki is from the gods' realm. Even if he is guilty, he must be brought to the gods' realm for trial. He is not in a good mood right now, as the rumbling thunder in the sky is the best proof. Tony, it seems we can't talk together anymore. Bang. The energy in the palm was quickly gathered together, and then launched out the moment Thor reacted. Bang. Even though Thor made a move to block, he was still blasted far away by Tony's energy cannon. He rolled a few times in the mud-filled forest before he stabilized his body. You pissed me off. When Thor stood up again, his whole body was covered with thunder and lightning, and even his eyes were filled with dazzling lightning. Tony, you talk a lot of nonsense. If you have the skills, just come. Before he could finish his words, Thor threw a hammer and knocked Tony away. Pong, pong, steady, steady. Jarvis turns on the balance sensing function. Jarvis, okay, function is opening. Since the steel armor has a propulsion device and the artificial intelligence assistance of Jarvis, Tony returned to his normal standing appearance within a few seconds, but Thor was not going to let him go just like that. Snort, boom, boom, click. Thor summoned the power of thunder in the space, and saw a thunderbolt in the sky immediately obeying his call and chopping down. Then he used Thor's hammer to guide the thunder and lightning to hit Tony. Alert, alert, excessive energy charging, serious external damage to the armor. Alarm. Jarvis's alarm rang through the suit, and Tony was so stuck by the lightning that he didn't even have the ability to move, let alone run away. Thor didn't intend to kill him, so Tony was just hit by lightning for a while, and then Thor stopped. Energy reaches 400%. When everything was over, Jarvis's voice sounded in the armor, and even Tony himself expressed surprise at this situation. Oh, how could this happen? Buzz, bang. He has never been a person who is willing to suffer losses, especially when he has a lot of energy. Stop fighting. At this time, Captain America also arrived here. He stood between the two of them and wanted to clarify the matter. Tony, who had just taken advantage, did not object, but how could Thor accept it? Thor, come again. Is this how you men like to fight and kill? On the plane, Natasha Romanoff asked as she looked at the scene in the mirror of space, created by Robert. Don't get so close, okay? And don't you feel weird coming from your mouth? Robert felt a little more comfortable after he distanced himself from Natasha Romanoff. At the same time, facing her question, he felt that it was weird to say such words from the mouth of a top female agent who kills without blinking an eye. Snort. Natasha Romanoff finally figured it out. Robert just didn't want to get close to her. She was also arrogant, so naturally she wouldn't put her hot face on someone else's cold ass. Boom. At this time, Tony's side, in cooperation with the US team, defeated Thor, who was not using his full strength, and was defeated. Finally, the opponent couldn't help but started to use his skills. Thor hit the US team's shield with a hammer, and the power of thunder carried supreme power. However, because the US team's shield was made of vibranium, the thunder and lightning not only failed to cause damage to him, but instead damaged Thor himself, and Tony on the side was shocked. Buzz buzz. Although there was no physical injury, Captain America's ears were uncomfortable. The buzzing tinnitus did not disappear until tens of seconds later. When the captain recovered, he stood up and looked at the area around him that was almost flattened by a battle between several people. Ah, forehead. Tony and Saul also stood up slowly. At this time, they also regained their senses and had time to look around. Captain America, have you had enough trouble? He originally came to break up the fight, but ended up being coerced by the two into participating in a battle. Captain America was dissatisfied at this time. Tony, then I have to take a look and listen to this guy's opinion. In fact, I didn't want to fight from the beginning. Thor, Loki must return to God's realm, and the Tesseract must be kept safe by us. Tony, maybe you can discuss this with him. If he agrees, I'll be fine with it. What? Having just experienced a big battle, Thor couldn't understand who Tony was talking about for a while, until he shouted something into the air. Robert, come out and clean up the mess, okay? Bang. The appearance of a space gate frustrated Thor's original intention of taking Loki away. Robert, Thor, your brother Loki killed people wantonly on the Earth and caused a very bad impact, so we can't let you take him away, at least until he is tried. What about the Rubik's Cube? I will need it when I return to God's realm. Thor lost his arrogance as a god in front of Robert, and instead chose to communicate in a more equal way. The fundamental reason was strength. You can talk to the senior officials about the Rubik's Cube issue. I'm not interested in it. Robert had already made his words very clear, and Thor did not ask any more questions. Since Loki could not be taken away, and the whereabouts of the Tesseract were unknown, the only way left in front of Thor was dang dang. The sound of cold chains rapped on the ground. In the aircraft carrier belonging to S.H.I.E.L.D., Loki was already handcuffed and shackled and escorted by more than a dozen fully armed agents to a special prison. Tell me, why are you here? After Loki was successfully imprisoned in a specially made prison, Fury crossed his arms and began to ask questions. However, seeing that Loki did not answer him immediately, and instead chose to look at the structure of the cell, Fury said in order to dispel his idea: escape. If you want to escape. Fury pressed a few times on the console as he spoke. Immediately, the bottom of Loki's transparent cell was opened, and strong wind was poured in. Loki couldn't help but look down and found that there was nothing but darkness. Fury, don't have any ideas. Even if you just scratch the glass slightly, it will cause you to fall freely from an altitude of 9,000 meters with this iron cage. Fury's threat was very effective, and Loki naturally retracted his hand that he didn't know what to do. Loki, I guess he wasn't made for me. Fury, the thing that was supposed to be locked up was much more dangerous than you. Loki, I heard, he is a violent beast who pretends to be an ordinary person. How desperate must you be to find such a monster to save you? He looked directly at the surveillance camera. Loki's words were partly for Fury and partly for someone in the surveillance room. Fury, you threatened us with war and stole things you couldn't control at all. Fury had been trying to trick Loki throughout the entire interrogation, but he didn't know if it was because he, the S.H.I.E.L.D. leader, was letting him off, because he didn't get much out of it. Loki's provocation had an effect. Fury later realized this and stopped the interrogation decisively. This guy is really verbose. Banner pretended to be calm, but even so, almost everyone could see the embarrassed look on his face. Captain America. I'm afraid it's not just that. Loki may have other purposes. Thor, what do you think he wants to do? Thor, he has an army called the Chitauri. They are not from the god's domain, nor do they belong to any planet. Loki plans to lead them to attack the Earth, and they will definitely help him. I think the condition is the Tesseract. Cap, an army from outer space. The expressions of almost everyone at the scene began to become solemn, except Tony. Hey, can't you try giving that to me? Why, you didn't get up to eat in the morning, and now you come to rob me. Although Robert said so, he still divided the sandwich in his hand into two parts and gave them to Tony. That's pretty much it. Just when Tony was about to feast, he found that the surroundings were quiet, and there seemed to be no other sound except Robert's eating. Why are you all looking at me? Tony scratched his face and asked after finding nothing strange. Captain America. Robert, do you have the confidence to deal with that alien army? Tony's words were ignored by Captain America. In fact, what everyone really looked at was Robert beside him. Then I'm not sure. After all, I've never met him and never fought against him. When his words came out, the faces of everyone present became more solemn. In fact, what they didn't know was that Robert was just habitually modest. Tony, if even you can't deal with those alien armies, then we people should surrender as soon as possible. My friend, you are our spiritual support. You should stay confident at this time. Really? Well then, I am confident that I can crush those alien monsters with one hand. Captain America. Haha, I have to say I like the way you look now, it reminds me of 70 years ago. Banner. I think Robert must have been pretty cool back then. Captain America. That's natural. If you're interested, I can tell you the story of how we fought side by side. Natasha Romanoff. Then I'll start looking forward to it. The atmosphere on the court became lively because of the conversation between Robert and Tony, but there was one person who seemed a little out of place. Thor stood nearby and didn't know how to join in. Fortunately, their chat didn't last long before they returned to Loki, so Thor didn't stay awkwardly aside for too long. Captain America. I don't understand, why would Loki surrender? How can he command the army here? Banner. I think it's better not to focus on Loki. He's just a lunatic. It's hard for normal people to figure out what he's thinking. Banner's words were somewhat emotional, but that's understandable. After all, Loki just mocked him for being a monster, but he seemed to have forgotten that his brother was still standing here. Thor. You'd better keep your mouth clean. Loki is indeed a bit unreasonable, but he is from the divine realm, and he and I are brothers. Natasha Romanoff. He killed 80 people in 2 days. Thor. Well, we are actually cousins. Banner. I think their goal is machinery. What do they want with metal iridium? Tony. The teleporter, that's much more stable than S.H.I.E.L.D. It's similar to the shuttle watch that Robert and I invented, except that it will become larger and last longer according to Loki's needs. Tony said and went to the control panel of the aircraft carrier and started to draw. They don't have my new elements, so they will definitely need more materials, but those Bartons should be easy to get. Captain America. Then what should we do? Just sit back and wait for death? Of course not, Captain. Sitting and waiting has never been S.H.I.E.L.D.'s style, so this time we will take the initiative. Fury walked out of a cabin, answered Team USA's questions, and began to arrange tasks. Drive Banner, you are an expert in gamma-ray research. I hope to find a breakthrough from this point. Is it okay for you to have Tony assist you? Banner. I'm not sure, this will take some time. Banner himself is still modest, or in a rigorous manner, but someone obviously prefers to be more showy. With my help, Doctor, your speed will be greatly improved. Let's go. We have to go to a place with equipment. Otherwise, we can't find the Rubik's Cube by fantasy, right? Fury. The laboratory is ready for you. Let Dr. Banner take you there, Tony. Banner. Okay. Everyone began to disperse, and Robert followed Tony and Banner to the laboratory, because there was something there that he had just ignored. How about coming to the party I threw after these actions are completed? You don't know, Robert, since I got together with Pepper, I haven't been able to hold parties as I did before. As he was talking, Tony suddenly became alert. He raised his eyes and looked around to make sure that no one was paying attention here before he revealed his long-planned plan. But I think if you offered to throw a party, Pepper would agree. Come on, I don't want to ruin the relationship between you and Pepper. You might blame me when the time comes. Robert expressed no interest in Tony's idea, so the other party could only use his ultimate move. Eugene Ann is actually the most famous new female star in Hollywood. People say she is the new spokesperson for the purists. What do you think? Don't you want to meet her? Tony handed the phone to Robert and asked him to see what the so-called spokesperson for the purist party looked like. Tisk, it does seem pretty good. When Robert saw the photo, he felt that it was the case. The photo Tony showed him was just a normal photo of the girl dressed neatly. It's not like a photo shoot, but the neatly dressed outfit gives people a girl next door feel. How about it? Let me tell you, do you want to think about it? I swear I just miss the days of partying, and I definitely don't want to take this opportunity to meet the opposite gender. While encouraging Robert, Tony also raised his hand and swore that no one knew how much pain a playboy who once played every night had to endure to suddenly transform into a good family man. In order to alleviate this discomfort, Tony could only ask Robert to come forward and find the original feeling, but he also really loved Pepper, so Tony didn't intend to mess around, he just wanted to relax. Let me consider it. Robert was still hesitant because he remembered that in the original book, he didn't seem to see Tony having a party with Pepper after that, and he was afraid that the two would misunderstand for his own reasons. If it's just a misunderstanding, that's fine, just explain it clearly, but if it separates the two. If that were the case, Robert felt that he could not forgive himself, and he might actually become bald due to self-guilt. What are you talking about? Captain America came up when Robert was worried about this and that, and Tony also saw the opportunity and said, That's it. Tony said something in Robert's ear, then let go of his shoulders and spoke to the captain and Banner in front of him. Robert wants me to hold a party. I think we can go to it together after we win. When Tony's words came out, Captain America couldn't help but frown. He was thinking about things after victory before the battle even started. This seemed a bit out of character. How could Robert have become so careless? Has he forgotten that before the war pride was the most taboo thing on the battlefield? Thinking in his mind, Captain America looked at Robert with questioning eyes, but seeing his helpless expression, Captain America had a guess in his mind. I asked Robert how could he be like this. It turned out that Tony wanted to have a party and deliberately hooked Robert up. Is he always so out of tune? At this time, Captain America was already a little dissatisfied with Tony, but due to the fact that they might have to work together in the future in Robert's face, he did not speak out directly but chose to walk into the laboratory without saying a word. What does he mean? Tony, who felt that he was being ignored, was a little angry. He looked at Robert and then wanted to rush into the laboratory to reason with Captain America, or teach him to be polite. This was Tony's idea, and Robert appeared as a mediator. In fact, he was caught in the middle between two friends and neither side was good. Maybe it's because the captain is old and doesn't like to make noise. Forget it, why don't I go and join Tony when the time comes? Don't bother Steve. Tony, that's great of you to agree. Then I won't go out and meet that guy in outdated clothes. Although Tony said that, his volume was not shy at all. Robert estimated that Captain America inside heard it more or less. As a person who never suffers, Tony felt much more comfortable after speaking loudly. At that moment, he turned his attention to Banner. Ah, Mr. Stark, I actually don't have much time recently. Tony, oh, I understand. In fact, I am being polite. After all, which owner would want a time bomb in the house? You said so, Robert, ha ha ha. Laughing, Tony walked into the laboratory, completely ignoring Dr. Banner, whose face had turned dark. If he hadn't endured it, a big green baby would have come out. Everyone's mood at the moment is actually a bit strange. The scepter in the laboratory is quietly releasing energy. If they can notice it, they may get the answer. Okay, how do we start? Captain America took a deep breath in the laboratory. The reason why he did this was because for some reason, he always seemed to be holding a breath in his chest, which made him feel particularly bad. Tony, what to do? Captain, I am not looking down on you. Even if I tell you all the steps, you may not be able to find the Rubik's Cube. Banner, he's right. Even though Captain doesn't want to say it, you and Robert are a bit redundant here. He was angry with Tony outside, and now he was looking for a place to vent it out, so he chose two seemingly insignificant people here as his target. Who told you to say that? The captain really can't help you much, but Robert is my friend. Have you considered the consequences of saying that? Big green man. Before Robert even started to say anything, Tony took the lead in helping him fight the injustice. Captain America, why am I useless? If you two are so useful, why doesn't Fury let you complete all the tasks? Why does he come to me? The scene was engulfed in quarrels. Fortunately, the sound insulation effect behind the closed door in the laboratory was good, otherwise it would really attract many people. Why do you want to hit them? Seeing the noisy people, Robert began to get angry uncontrollably, and the idea of beating Tony and the others often flashed through his mind. Wrong. Robert quickly suppressed his thoughts, and at the same time, a ball of space power enveloped him. Suddenly, the upset feeling disappeared without a trace, but Tony and the captain were not relieved yet. Tony, how do I know what Fury is thinking? Maybe he is hiding something from us. Cap, hide it from us. You mean Fury? Tony, yes Captain, if you can understand these computer programs, I might be able to tell you Fury's secret. Humph, no need. Tony's words were very irritable. At this time, Captain America had no patience to maintain a stable mood. He turned around and walked out of the laboratory, obviously wanting to find a solution on his own. Only Banner, Tony and Robert were left. Banner and Tony were both tinkering with the computers in front of them, and only Robert walked up to Loki's scepter. Well, I was so anxious to sleep last night that I pulled you away, but it's not too late now. Come on, let me see what kind of abilities you can give me. As Robert spoke, he He stretched his hand towards the top of the scepter, and suddenly a voice sounded in his mind. Beep. Detected to obtain ability. Mind control. One of the most powerful forces in the universe, it can control or influence the thinking of all living things at will, and is immune to most mental attacks at the same time. Do you want to obtain mind control? This. Robert was shocked. After reading the skill introduction once, he quickly read it carefully several times until he was sure that he was not dazzled. He almost jumped with excitement. What is there to hesitate about? Sure. Ding. Ability obtained successfully. The moment ability became successful, Robert felt that the world in front of him seemed a little different. It seemed to become clearer and more colorful, as if a filter had been added. Is it an improvement in mental strength? Tony, what are you doing? I asked you to find the Rubik's Cube, not to hack into my database. Just as Robert was feeling the different feelings brought about by his new ability, Fury suddenly walked in from outside. He angrily questioned Tony, looking like he was begging for an explanation. However, Tony didn't care at all about Fury's questioning. What he was most concerned about now was that the SHIELD database was about to be cracked. Don't panic, Fury, it's 97%. If you tell me the truth now, I might be able to suspend the action. Of course he was joking. After all, he was only one step away from the truth. Tony was never a person who gave up easily, let alone at this time. Fury. Listen to me, Tony, that's all. Even though he knew that Tony might be playing tricks on him, Fury still wanted to try hard. What if he got fooled? Clang. Obviously human power is a little faster than your computer at this time. Captain America also came back at this time. He actually visited SHIELD's secret storage room just now, and found the weapon developed by the Tesseract in a box marked Top Secret. By the way, if you don't make top secret things so mysterious and just throw them away in the utility room like garbage, wouldn't anyone be able to discover them? Gentlemen, we search for everything related to the Rubik's Cube, but this does not mean that we are making. Fury still wanted to quibble at this point, but when Tony put the data on the computer in front of him. Come on, Fury, I've seen the details of your plan. Do you want me to read it to you now? Cap. I think you need to give us an explanation, sir. Maybe this will be the last time I call you that. Fury was told that he didn't know how to answer the question. In fact, he had been feeling a lump in his chest since he entered the laboratory, making it impossible for him to think calmly. I think there is a more pressing issue now, and that is Dr. Banner. Did you know, Loki has been using you to mess with us at a critical moment? At this time, Natasha Romanoff and Thor also walked into the laboratory. Natasha Romanoff, who had just made a surprise interrogation of Loki, took it for granted that she had gotten the truth. However, the way she expressed her thoughts before entering this room was very reserved, but for some reason after entering, her words became hurtful and angry. Banner. What do you mean? Didn't you invite me here? Why are you still blaming me now? Natasha Romanoff. Are you sure you're not here because I'm ogling you? Banner. I'm really fed up with your crazy behavior today. Can people like this really form a team together? Fury. Why not? If it weren't for some curious guy and another thief who likes to rummage around, our team could be formed, and I guarantee it would keep running smoothly for a long time. There is obviously something in Fury's words, and anyone with a discerning eye can tell which two people he is sarcastic about. Tony couldn't stand this anger, so he asked before Captain America could. What do you mean? Don't team members have some right to know? Are you using a Rubik's Cube to create such weapons of mass destruction for the sake of mankind? Fury. Do you want me to remind you, Tony, how did your Stark family make their fortune? Arms are nuclear bombs. His words struck a chord with Tony. For a moment, Fury really made the genius speechless. At this time, the American team finally found a chance to speak. Captain America. No matter what, the power of the Rubik's Cube is too powerful. I can't figure out why you would want to use it to make weapons. Can the things you create really be controllable by ordinary people? Fury. It's not because of him. Captain America's words were on point, and Fury finally found a point to vent his emotions. Thor. Me. Thor pointed at himself. He didn't understand why what was fine just now suddenly became like this, especially now that the target seemed to be pointed at himself. Fury. Yes, I'm not targeting you, but your previous arrival let me know that there are a group of creatures in outer space that are much stronger than us, so in order to protect myself, I had to choose to use the Rubik's Cube. Thor, come on, I thought you could be so smart, but that's where it ends. Do you know the consequences of using the Rubik's Cube? Perhaps your shallow knowledge allows you to understand that every time you use that thing, it will send out a dazzling signal in the universe. What? Fury has really never heard of Thor's statement. Obviously his knowledge is really shallow. Indeed, in the universe now, any advanced civilization can actually find the location of the Earth, but who told you to constantly use the power of the Rubik's Cube before? You only use the most superficial level of power, but more of it has actually been dispersed into the universe. Do you need me to describe what this situation is like? Robert saw that things were deteriorating, and they might even fight if they were allowed to argue, so he quickly took the word and turned off the mind gem. Otherwise, it would affect the emotions of the surrounding creatures at any time. Tony, describe how I am looking forward to it, bro. Everyone's attention was indeed attracted by Robert's words, but unlike Captain America, who was the type who waited quietly for the answer, Tony seemed more eager, perhaps with the intention of slapping Fury in the face. Let's put it this way, you frequently use the Tesseract so that the first wave of energy released has not finished dissipating naturally before the second wave comes. Such behavior is tantamount to lighting up a 100 million watt energy in the originally dark universe. Big light bulb. Robert's metaphor is very easy to understand. In fact, Saul didn't know what he said before, but this did not prevent him from understanding the harm involved. To be honest, even we people in the God's domain don't dare to do something as crazy as you. The Earth may not be far from destruction. After all, there are many people who covet the Tesseract ability. The few I know are not human. I can handle it. Thor seemed to be supplementing Robert's words, but the effect was like a heavy hammer hitting everyone's hearts, making their hearts that were not affected by the Mind Stone begin to feel dull again. You should have known this all along, right, Robert? Why didn't you ever tell me? Fury has now become the target of public criticism, but he hasn't figured out the situation yet, so he started to beat up and question Robert. Not to mention whether you will listen even if I explain it clearly to you, I just don't like the way you talk to me now. I'll give you a chance to do it again. Fury, braised eggs, you're talking about me. After receiving Robert's affirmative nod of confirmation, his originally dark face became even darker. I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it. After Robert finished speaking, he slapped Fury on the face. He really couldn't stand the feeling of being looked at with disgust. Snapped. Oh, Natasha Romanoff screamed in shock, it felt like a slap fell on her face. Beautiful Robert, you did what I always wanted to do. Different from the surprise of Natasha Romanoff and others, Tony's expression was one of great surprise, as if his great revenge had been avenged. Fury fell to the ground, and he subconsciously wanted to stand up and get angry. After all, he had not been beaten like this for a long time after being in the top position for a long time. You what? Robert glanced sideways at Fury, and saw that he who was still so aggressive suddenly felt relieved. The guy opposite is a lunatic that even the president would dare to kill. Forget it, wait until you find the opportunity to trouble him later, just bear with it for now. Fury was already planning to grit his teeth and swallow it. After all, Robert's extraordinary strength prevented him from having any head-on thoughts. What I did was wrong. I admit my mistake here. Lieutenant General Robert, please forgive me. Fury's current performance is actually like the old Chinese saying, if you keep the green hills, you won't be afraid of running out of firewood. I don't want to be on the lookout for you at any time. Of course, Robert could see through Fury's simple thoughts. He didn't intend to have a knife hidden in his back at all times, ready to be stabbed at any time. The yellow energy represented by the energy of the Mind Stone emitted from Robert's hand and fell directly on Fury in front of everyone. Natasha Romanoff thought that Robert was going to kill Fury. After all, she was the boss and she was not doing anything at this time. Don't want, Tony. Oh, Cap, Robert, Thor, has he always been this strong? Banner. To be honest, I'm new here. Everyone thought that Fury would end badly, so they all looked at Robert. His behavior of killing people at every turn was really hard for normal people to accept. Come on friends, I'm too lazy to kill this old boy Fury. In fact, I just want to teach him something, don't you think so, Fury? Woof woof. Fury responded positively to Robert, but the way he spoke was a little weird. Well, I'll try again. Perhaps it was the unfamiliarity with the new ability that led Robert to set Fury as a dog. It must be caused by not being familiar with the new ability. There must be no personal grudges. Did you control him? Tony was quite curious about this situation, as were everyone else around him. But at this time, the program set by Banner to find the Rubik's Cube had successfully found the whereabouts of the Rubik's Cube, but there was something strange about that place. Banner. Oh, my God. Boom, boom. Several consecutive explosions directly hit the top of the laboratory where Robert and the others were located. Fortunately, a special reinforced structure was built here, otherwise it would really be possible to hurt people like Tony who did not have any protective ability. Captain America. Hurry up and put on your armor. Tony. Okay, Robert. These people are really annoying. The flow of space power in his body is obviously a precursor to an upcoming attack. Captain America. Robert, won't you take action until the most critical moment? Although Fury did something wrong, he was right to say that our Avengers team should work together more. After all, we can't always count on you, right? Robert. I actually don't care. Captain America. Come on, that would be so tiring. Well, I'll leave the matter to you to solve. Captain America. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. After promising Robert, Captain America trotted to find his equipment, and Thor ran out closely behind him for some unknown reason. Master, what should I do now? Next to Robert, Fury asked respectfully. Don't call me that, it will make me sick. Just stay the same as before, just do whatever you want now. Fury's name and flattering expression really disgusted Robert, and in the end he still endured the discomfort and said those words. Fury. Yes, Lieutenant General Robert. At this moment, he has actually been influenced by Robert through mind control. This kind of control is not actually control. The so-called control is the kind that acts completely according to the user's will, but that kind must be on the premise of erasing the original consciousness. For example, Fury's original consciousness is actually preserved now, but even when facing Robert, he can't help but be respectful and please, and this is all affected. Well, please leave quickly. Robert waved his hand. Although Fury was pretending, the admiration in his eyes could not be hidden, which was very unbearable. Can a normal man tolerate a black man who has eyes full of himself? Robert can't stand it anyway. What happened to Hill? After leaving the room, Fury finally felt normal. He is currently asking his right-hand assistant about the current situation through the connection. Hill, we've been bombed, sir. 2 engines have stalled and must be repaired, but that will have to wait until we land. Now I'm afraid we can only use the 2 remaining engines to keep flying. If they are also destroyed, the result will be tragic. Fury. So now someone has to fix the engine, right? Hill. Yes, and we have to act quickly. With such a bad situation in front of him, Fury does have his own merits, such as his ability to always stay calm at critical moments. Did you hear that, Tony? Due to the shield system invasion just now, Fury was sure that Tony could definitely hear the message from him and others. I heard it. I'm going to fix it. Sure enough, as soon as Fury finished asking, Tony answered. Coulson, open the defensive blockade and go to the armory to distribute equipment. Natasha Romanoff, agent, are you okay? I just saw a missile flying towards you and Banner. He was not angered, was he? After Tony solved the engine problem, Fury began to arrange follow-up matters, but what he was most worried about now was Banner. If it is possible for an invader to destroy a flying aircraft carrier, if Banner has an emotional outburst, it may greatly increase the chance of destroying the aircraft carrier, which is why Fury attaches so much importance to it. Natasha Romanoff. Bah, I'm fine. She spit out some of the dust she had just breathed out from her mouth before answering Fury. Perhaps it was because the explosion just now made her so stunned that she did not realize that the main thing Fury was asking was not her. There was a muffled groan, and Natasha Romanoff noticed Banner not far away. His condition at the moment was not good. Fury. As long as you're okay. Where's Dr. Banner? Is he okay? Seeing that Natasha Romanoff didn't seem to understand what he meant, Fury had no choice but to speak more clearly. Natasha Romanoff. He's not in a good place. Fury. Oh, oops. Try to stabilize his emotions. If that doesn't work, ask Lieutenant General Robert to take action. Natasha Romanoff. I try to use my ability to solve problems, but if there is no other way, I have to do what you said. As a top agent, she is still very arrogant. Asking for help has never been Natasha Romanoff's way of doing things. Banner, you have to persist, otherwise you will play into Loki's hands. Control your emotions and take a deep breath with me, okay? Natasha Romanoff looked at Dr. Banner, who was rolling on the ground as if something was about to come out of his body. Even though green skin began to appear on his body, she still wanted to try it. Natasha Romanoff, we're going to be fine. Take a deep breath, hush, 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 huh. Banner. Hiss. Who. The all-purpose deep breathing method seemed to have some effect. At least Banner's body no longer had green skin, which was a good sign. Natasha Romanoff was about to try harder, but two kind-hearted soldiers interrupted her. Soldier. Need any help? Go away. Natasha Romanoff was startled by these people. It was like she was defusing a bomb, but two people who didn't know the truth suddenly appeared next to the bomb and were playing kicks. This not only affects the operation of bomb disposal personnel, but also affects the mood of bomb disposal. With a low roar, Banner's condition deteriorated again. The results that Natasha Romanoff had just achieved with great difficulty could be said to have fallen short. Frantically waving the two soldiers away, she began to worry about her own safety. She knew that her feet were still stuck due to the explosion just now. After exerting force twice and finding that she couldn't break away at all, Natasha Romanoff could only place her hope on Banner not to change. We'll be fine. Listen, Banner, I guarantee with my life that I will take you far away and no one will bother you again. Banner. Your life. That's not what you said just now. Ho. Large patches of green skin began to appear on his body, along with large chunks of terrifying muscles. The clothes on his body also began to be damaged, which exposed one of the most easily overlooked artifacts on Banner's body, face. The quality of these pants is really good. Robert has actually been observing the situation here. After all, who doesn't look forward to the appearance of a fat green man? This is the kind of early Hulk that was half black and half white. If it is completely bleached in the later stage, its strength will be greatly weakened. After all, the laws of the universe are there. When everyone is in the blackened state, their strength will be stronger than when they are in the righteous state. It is not clear why. Roar. While Robert was struggling with whether or not these things existed, the Hulk in Dr. Banner's body had already rushed out. Snort. With a cold snort, Hulk stared at Natasha Romanoff for a while. Seeing the growing fear in her eyes, Hulk laughed angrily. Perhaps compared to the explosion just now, the hurtful words of Tony and others were the real reason for Hulk's appearance. After all, who doesn't have a little temper? I guess even if the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came, they still wouldn't be able to bear being called a monster in front of someone. Clang. Oops. Hulk originally planned to leave, but Natasha Romanoff's sudden struggling voice attracted his attention again. Roar. It suddenly looked up to the sky and roared, seemingly changing its mind, and suddenly rushed towards Natasha Romanoff. Fake. Seeing this scene, Natasha Romanoff's strong desire to survive made her potential explode. She stood up suddenly and ran away as fast as possible. Do you need my help? Robert was still asking Natasha Romanoff if he wanted to help her, but Saul took action directly. Bump. Hulk was directly knocked out. With this impact, ordinary people would have been stunned by the impact, but that was Hulk. Roar. Getting up from the ground, Hulk shook his head and immediately rushed towards Thor. Thor. No. Brothers, we are together, remember? Boom. Hulk punched Thor in the face, causing ripples to appear on that handsome face. It responded to the other party's words with practical actions. Tui. Thor got up from the ground and spit out water. Hulk's attack just now seemed powerful, but in fact it didn't even hurt him much, but his anger was brought out. Go to hell. When Hulk saw that Thor could actually stand up unharmed, Hulk immediately felt that his efforts were in vain. He was furious and rushed over to give Thor a few more blows. It seems I have to find another way to communicate with you. Buzz. Thor stretched one hand into the air, and Thor's hammer quickly flew into his hand. As soon as Hulk rushed to Thor, he was knocked over by a hammer. How could he be so angry? Now two guys who were not convinced by either of them started fighting, and the scene was like a house-breaking scene. Hulk and the others have already reached the control room on the second floor. All the monitoring equipment has been destroyed, and the repeated control room has been destroyed. An agent's shout appeared in SHIELD's connection system. Who knows what he just experienced? Hill, Director, if we let Hulk continue fighting like this, I think we will be destroyed soon. That would be exactly what the intruder wants. Fury, then what are you waiting for? Find something to attract its attention. It's best to take it away from the aircraft carrier. Hill, can you hear escort aircraft? No. 083, now you need to attract Hulk's attention, located at the breach. As she issued the order, an escorting F-35 fighter jet outside the aircraft carrier began to approach slowly. Commander, I have reached the predetermined position and request the firing order. With superb driving skills, the fighter pilot successfully flew the fighter inside the damaged aircraft carrier and also achieved a hovering operation. Now that his hand was on the firing button of the machine gun, the fighter pilot had locked onto the big green man running wild inside, and he could fire with just one command. Hill, fire now. Pilot, yes. The machine gun of a fighter jet is used for close combat in the air. Now when it is used in a place like this, its power is useless even with the top bulletproof glass. Roar, but now it was facing Hulk. Those bullets were tilted towards Hulk's back. It can't be said that there was no harm, but its effect was very different from that of tickling. The pilot only fired for a while, and thousands of bullets hit Hulk, which caused his original anger towards Thor to suddenly transfer to the F-35. Target is crazy. Target is crazy. Amid the pilot's frantic shouting, Hulk jumped onto the back of the fighter plane. Lead it away and don't let Hulk stay on the aircraft carrier. The pilot's shouting did not usher in the news of retreat or imminent support, and the words of, leave away, were particularly harsh in the pilot's ears. However, even if the pilot wanted to choose to disobey the order for his own life, Hulk would not give him this chance. He only saw him jumping on the back of the fighter plane and starting to destroy it. The result was that the pilot began to fly outside the aircraft carrier without moving. Hulk is obviously aware that he is moving away from the aircraft carrier, but it does not have any sense of crisis but simply wants to go back and fight Thor again. Boom! Hulk suddenly began to exert force. The engine behind the fighter plane was an extremely delicate and sensitive device, and it exploded immediately after being tampered with by its huge force. In an instant, the plane was in a stalled state. Without the engine, it would be useless no matter how skilled the pilot was. Now his only way out may be. Pong! The trigger device of the ejection seat was activated by the pilot. Normally he would be launched like a cannonball, but Hulk would not just watch. Roar! The pilot was directly caught by Hulk. Fortunately, it didn't seem to have much interest in it. It just glanced at it and then threw it away casually. Bang! An parachute bag unfolded in the air, and the pilot could not help but let out a sigh of relief as he saved his life. If Hulk had just one wrong thought, he would be gone. The F-35 fighter jet fell freely downwards. Hulk, who was standing on it, had wasted too much time and now had no conditions to return to the aircraft carrier. He even had no place to stand firmly in the air. He could only let it fall. The people on the aircraft carrier are not doing well at this time, especially Tony, who is now responsible for repairing the engine. Captain, have you seen the red wrench? Just help me pull it when I say pull it later. Captain America. Yes, I saw it. Wait a minute, you don't want to go in and push it to start the engine, do you? Don't do that. If you don't do it right, you will be torn into pieces. Tony, as long as you can pull that wrench in time, I'll be fine. Pen. The propulsion device of the steel armor was activated, and Tony flew into the engine with Captain America's disbelieving eyes and began to push it to rotate alone. Captain America. I'm sorry Tony, I looked down on you a little before and thought you were just a selfish guy. Although I didn't say it explicitly, I do think so, but what you are doing now, to be honest, if you were to do it to me, I might not have the courage you have. Tony was startled by Captain America's frankness at this time, and then his affection for him doubled. Honestly, I'm not saying this just because you hold my life in your hands at any time. Actually, well, there's something wrong with me. You know, you're actually quite strong, no matter in terms of personal power or the commanding aspect of the team. Captain America. Thank you, I'm very happy to get your approval. At this time, a smile began to appear on his face. Without the influence of the Mind Stone, the two of them could finally start communicating in their usual normal state, and the result was very harmonious. At this time, Captain America is tightly holding the red wrench Tony mentioned, which is where his life lies. If Captain America is slow for a while, Tony may be in trouble. But a group of people who suddenly broke in didn't seem to want their repair process to go smoothly. Because he arrived in a hurry, Captain America didn't even take the shield. As a result, he could only be beaten passively now. The headquarters is under attack. All armed personnel go to support immediately. The house leaked and it rained all night, and life was not easy in the aircraft carrier command cabin at this time. An armed team led by Hawkeye successfully infiltrated here and launched a fierce attack. Bang bang. Fury took his pistol and started to fight back, just like the boss did, but the soldiers around him were running around like a piece of loose sand. Boom. With an explosion, the attention of Fury and other people who still had the sense of resistance were attracted to the intruder at the door. There were actually not many intruders, only a few people, but these few people made a mess in the SHIELD command module, which claims to monitor the world and can handle any conflict. Fury, what are you all doing? Pick up a gun and fight back. He looked around and saw that there were clearly at least 100 people on his side, while only 5 or 6 intruders showed up. Such a huge disparity in numbers made Fury unable to believe that his side was actually at a disadvantage. Careful. Suddenly, just when Fury wanted to stop a running soldier and ask him clearly, Hill rushed over and took him aside, and where he was standing just now. Boom. There was an explosion, and Fury, who was a black braised egg, couldn't help but turn pale on his face. It was obvious that he was frightened at times. Snort. After shooting the arrow, Barton saw that he failed to hit the target, and immediately began to change his target. He aimed at the real purpose of this trip. Shoo. As the arrow with the Trojan horse virus device accurately inserted into SHIELD's control computer, Barton immediately retreated because Fury and the others had already reacted. Eliminate all the people at the door. In addition, someone needs to intercept Barton. If possible, wake him up as soon as possible. If it doesn't work. When Fury said this, he paused, but this hesitation did not last long, and he immediately gave the order. If Patton resists fiercely or even poses a threat, then he will be killed directly. Natasha Romanoff. I'm going to get him. As soon as Fury finished speaking, Natasha Romanoff, who had been frightened by Hulk before, volunteered and said that combined with some missing information, people had to doubt her and Barton. Hill, sir, all engines have been forcibly shut down. We will soon enter a state of free fall, from an altitude of 9,000 meters. Patton's arrow was connected to a device, and the Trojan virus stored inside immediately took effect. SHIELD's system was successfully compromised, and the only 2 engines of the aircraft carrier now lost their function. Fury, Lieutenant General Robert, I want to ask you to take action. I don't know. Well, we've almost finished watching the show, let's watch mine next. In an instant, a burst of blue energy covered the entire aircraft carrier. The behemoth that originally lost the power provided by the engine should have fallen to the ground quickly, but as a result, it was suspended in the air. Jung. Tony just started an engine, but he looked at the current situation and felt a little frustrated. Maybe if we let that guy take action earlier, I wouldn't have so much of a problem, right? Captain America knocked out the last person who had just attacked him before he had time to respond to Tony's words. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.